Welcome back to the Rodcast. We are creeping closer and closer to the weekend, one of the most historic weekends in the history of Texas football. Top 5 matchup versus Georgia at home. The line has moved. What does that mean? Does that make you feel good? Does that make you feel a little optimistic, pessimistic about that game? We'll talk about it. Obviously, the guys in Vegas feel a certain way about that matchup. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about the matchup. We'll get into the X's and O's and preview the X factors in this matchup, talk about the tendency breakers. We'll do the deep dive and go rabbit holing into Texas versus Georgia. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain next segment and get into it a little bit more. We got NFL news, notes, and nuggets to address. We'll talk about the Texans. They got a big game coming up versus the Green Bay Packers. One of those really could be a statement game for C.J. Stroud. Be without his number one wide receiver, but he's got to go against the Green Bay Packers. And they also have a young, dynamic quarterback who is ascending. So we'll talk about that too coming up. We'll preview that matchup coming up next hour. Also, there's a lot of talk about the Heisman race in college football right now. Seems to be a two-man race. We'll hear from one of those men coming up a little bit later on in the show when we talk about that. What about the MVP race in the NFL? At the NFL level, it's early on, but it's still really interesting the way some of these storylines, narratives are playing out for MVP in the NFL. We'll discuss that. The NFL story about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their quarterback situation, that now has some legs. Remember, we talked about that Sunday night football stinker between the Steelers and the Jets. Well, now actually that's a little sexy. You got some storylines there. Devontae Adams being acquired by the Jets. And then you got a quarterback change with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So now that's a great storyline associated with that matchup in that game. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. Jerry Jones he wanted to clarify his rant that he had on sports radio down there in Dallas. So we have some audio of Jerry Jones once again trying to bring some clarity to his rant. So we'll do that. I will also dive into your usual favorites. We got Rod's rant. We got who said that, what the facts, what the stats. We got off the record. Of course, your topic for the big fat poll of the day. We're loaded on a Thursday. I'm glad you could join us. So let's get right to it. Let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid, but pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It's our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It's Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Ready to kick it off on a Thursday morning. It is the weather's getting nice. I actually slept with the window open last night, so that was nice.
It's cold. It's cold outside.
Great. It's great.
It's cold right now, man. It's chilly.
I was enjoying it. My room gets very warm for some reason. I don't know why it gets warmer than the rest of the house. So I was enjoying it being a little chilly this morning, just because no waking up sweating is always good. It's always
always a great thing. I agree. You don't want to be sweating. You said it means you either had a bad, crazy dream or like it's just hot, the AC out or something. Like it's always a bad situation when you're sweating. When you wake up.
Never a fun thing. But we'll get into it today. Have a good old day talking some football, getting into an not that super interesting Thursday night football game.
I'm not. Was it Broncos and Saints?
There's basically one storyline, and that's not even really a football storyline, which is Sean Payton going back to New Orleans.
Yeah,
it's basically your main storyline of the game.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, we can say Spencer Rattler getting his second start, I believe, is going to be. But
there you go. That's another good one. Yeah.
But
so
there's not.
You digging for some storylines. You just found two. What are you talking about? You just made it interesting. What you talking about? You just made it interesting right there. We got to talk about it because you just brought up two great storylines.
So you're trying to find reasons to enjoy a Thursday night football game when at the beginning of the season, I figured if it would be two bad teams, and then you thought 2 games in, well, maybe the Saints team is going to be really good, and then that just fell off a cliff.
Yeah, that died fast. Remember we talked. Yeah, they did great. Was the first 2 weeks basically of the season.
Yeah, and then because I've seen teams fall off where they're like, well, they're 3-0, and then they're bad. This was a different level of putting up 50 a game to not just everything's bad after that.
Remember what they did to the Cowboys? It was like,
no, no, no one wants to remember. That no one wants to remember that one. That was and then the next week it wasn't so much that, it was the next week I think they played the Eagles, and you were watching the score and you're like, wait, they have 3? How do they have 3?
Yes.
No. Well, how do they have 3? Like, is the whole team hurt? What happened? What happened? How do they only have 3 right now?
It was no. You're right. It's like the league caught up to it really fast, like very quickly. I'm not
Yes.
sure what. I don't watch Saints football that often, so I'm not sure what happened. But you're right. It went off the rails fast, and they have not been able to get it back to anything close to what they looked like in those first couple of weeks of the season.
No.
So yeah, maybe they'll rekindle it. But Denver's defense is playing really well.
Yeah, I mean,
Denver's defense actually is balling. That's how they're winning games because Bo Nix ain't. Yeah, I mean, it's not doing much.
No. You get 2 rookie quarterbacks tonight, and it's not the 2 rookie quarterbacks that you probably want to see the most.
Spencer Rattler may outplay him. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
But Spencer Rattler, that was the one. He played really well to begin the game, and he threw 2 picks in the last 3 series, I think, to end the game last week, which is how they end up. Like, it got out of hand, and then it got really, really out of hand. Okay. When he was trying to make the comeback and trying to force it downfield. So he's still got a little bit to go. And I mean, look, as Texas fans, we know you can unravel Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, honestly, it was much to our own regret because if we'd kept Spencer Rattler in the damn game, Texas would have won that game.
We should have.
Spencer Rattler goes out of the game, and Caleb Williams show happens, and Texas ends up losing that.
Yes,
at Texas A&M because the game plan was so good.
Hey man, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job, buddy.
Let him get a couple of passes. Let him get into a little bit of rhythm. We still be able to beat him, but Caleb Williams came in and it was like, oh, hell broke loose. So, yeah,
that was bad. Let me introduce you to my co-host. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is the new Rod Father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
Yeah, I appreciate the intro. Yeah, if you just look at, if you're talking about storylines, I mean, that Denver defense, like I said, it's been pretty good. It's in scoring defense. It is a top 5 scoring defense, and total defense is top 5 total defense. So that doesn't bode well for an offense like the Saints if they're indeed struggling. But that's the identity, really, and that's crazy. That's the identity of a Sean Payton team. Usually, the identity of a Sean Payton team is they can put up some points. Got a lot of exotic formations and personnel groupings. One of the most innovative, creative offenses, and maybe it still is. It just isn't working. But man, they're winning with it. The games they are winning, they're winning with defense.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the Broncos' identity for a while now.
Seems that way, yeah. Because Vic Fangio, when he was there, and it seems like, But remember, they had a game where they gave up like 70, didn't they? Wasn't that the Miami? That right? That was them.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, because that's the thing is, I feel like their identity has tried to be defense for a while, and then they keep trying to bring in offensive people to make it not just a defensive team, and they haven't figured out the offense at all recently.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
They drafted all those wide receivers, and then none of them are really. Yeah. It trade away. Jerry Jeudy was one of those experiments that was a guy that you watched in college and you went, he's really good. If he ever just learns how to get like sure hands, he'll be really good. He never learned how to get sure hands.
Well, it's like saying, oh, when the quarterback, when he becomes accurate, he's going to be awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, it did happen to Josh Allen, and it's one of the exceptions to the rule. But usually it's like, well, if he's not accurate out in college, he's not going to all of a sudden become accurate in the league when the game is at its most competitive and you have the most elite athletes you're playing up against. College is usually like, if you can't be accurate in college, that's not going to happen all of a sudden in the NFL. It did with Josh Allen. Now, he's one of the few where he got more accurate in the league than he was in college.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of freaky. But okay, yes, the Denver Broncos were the team to the Dolphins, of course. They allowed 70 points and 726 yards.
It's not
most surrendered by the Broncos, and the third highest point total and second highest yardage total in a game in NFL history. The 70 points were the most allowed in an NFL game since 1966, and the yardage total was the second only to the 1951 Rams win over the Yanks. And now they're top 5 defense. Give it up. See, it doesn't have to define them. I gotta go check and see. I forgot all about that actually. I don't know how they. I mean, that Dolphin. Think about how long ago it was for the Dolphins and where they are now. Like, think about where these two teams are now. One is a top 5 defense, and hell, the Dolphins might be I don't know. I haven't looked at it. They might be like a bottom.
Yeah, that was
offense right now.
Like 6 concussions ago.
Yeah. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. And you know what? I hope to. I'm starting to think I hope Tua just retires.
Look,
honestly,
I want the best for Tua, and it just doesn't feel like
just kick it. It's not worth it.
Doesn't feel like the best is like the odds. I mean, because how long are you going to keep pushing it? every season feels like you're walking into the season like, here it is. This is the one. Because he's still young enough to make another, 6, 7, 8 seasons if he was healthy?
The NFL's like, hey, man, we would like you to, retire and, decide to move on to something else too, because they don't want something tragic happening on the field. And it seems like, the more and more he's out there, obviously, the higher the chances are that something bad is going to happen.
Probably a few whispers at the owners' meetings.
I love, remember you had the proposal that, hey, the NFL, because I've been talking about the NFL, spreading, they want to be able to spread the game internationally, and they want to try their best to make the game more appealing to young women who are one day going to become mothers, who will be able to decide if their sons are going to play football. It's that kind of thing. It's deep. And so flag football is one of their candy cigarettes, they want women, they want young girls playing flag football, and internationally you can get flag football into like international competition. Like it's becoming, I've seen, Olympic sport, next Olympics. So they've been working on that for a while. And your idea was, since they need like an ambassador basically.
Yes.
For it. And maybe he can just play in it. Be like, you know what? I'm gonna start training for I think that was your idea. I think you threw it out there when we were talking about it. Honestly, dude, that should be it. Like, that should be the plan. Just say, hey man, we'll pay. We'll guarantee guarantee the rest of your contract, that kind of thing. You go out there and be the NFL's face of flag football.
Exactly.
You do it go train right now. Start training with it. Boom. And you'll get all the endorsements for it. We'll throw it all your way, so you'll make good money there. You'll play the Olympics. You'll get your gold medal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Surely change the trajectory. And you can become the flag football coach for man.
You can do that. You can do that till you're 50.
Dude, yeah, you're right. Till you're like 50.
Yeah.
Dude, retire and then get multiple goals. I mean, come on, man. Change the whole trajectory of your life, and then the second stage of your career will be also, as illustrious as the first stage of your career. You can still have a relationship with the game, that kind of thing. And I know that's big for guys. I'm with you. The more I think about it, I'm like, I don't know why this is not happening now. Maybe the NFL is thinking about it, and he is like,
I know why it's not happening. Is because it's very hard to tell a guy who just got a huge contract and wants to go win a Super Bowl and everything else, your dreams are over.
Yeah, I get it. Trust me, because it was hard to tell me something like that too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have wanted to quit the game, so I totally get it. But like I said, that idea that you had becomes more and more to me almost the best possible option for him to still play the game, relationship with the game, relationship with the league, still make your living for you, all that, and then be able to be safe, your quality of life,
exactly,
into your 50s, 60s, and 70s. Obviously, won't be in danger. And your well-being. And so I don't know. We got into that deep. I don't know. We probably should have gotten to something else, but I was thinking about that when we started talking about the difference in the Miami Dolphins. I still don't know what the Miami Dolphins are going to do at quarterback. I don't think anybody does. They do say he's going to play again. I think Mike McDaniel says he's going to play.
Well, he keeps saying, I expect him, and I think he'll be back this season and all of that. So
yeah, hopefully that's just him, coach speak.
Yeah.
And behind the scenes, they're actually
I'm sure he hopes, because he doesn't have any other option. Sure, there's a part of him that hopes it's like, and I mean, you always hope that everything works out the best way it can, which is the doctors come back and go, dude, it's fine. People are overreacting. He can go back in and play. And you're like, cool, we have a shot for the playoffs and I won't lose my job. I understand that. But then you have to hit the reality of the doctors come back and say, it's super dangerous.
It's very dangerous, brother. Very dangerous. We're talking about brain injuries, and you've had a lot of them already. Way more than the average person is supposed to have. All right, we'll get into some more NFL news, notes, and nuggets, obviously. But we got to talk Texas, Georgia. So first, let's get the Horn headlines, and then we'll come back and talk about the line, which has moved. All right, actually several times in the last 24 and 36 hours or so. We'll get to that. Also, the availability report, the first availability report for the SEC came out last night. We'll talk about the players that are on that availability report for Texas and Georgia and what that means for this matchup going forward. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB playoffs, the Dodgers got an 8-0 win over the Mets last night to take a 2-1 series lead in the NLCS. Walker Buehler pitched 4 innings, only allowing 3 hits and striking out 6. And the Dodgers bullpen was excellent the rest of the way en route to a shutout victory. Today, both series continue with the Guardians needing to get a win at home to get back in their series with the Yankees. And in the NFL, the Broncos will take on the Saints on Thursday Night Football with Sean Payton making his return to New Orleans for the first time since coming back to coaching. The Saints will be trying to get back in the winning column after losing their last 4 games without starting quarterback Derek Carr, who is listed as doubtful for the game. And that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. All right, let's get to this Texas-Georgia matchup. A lot of storylines here, obviously. And one of the most, I don't know if it's surprising, but obviously one of the most recent is Texas now is a 5-point favorite.
Yeah,
over
a little swing
Georgia.
there.
Yeah, and happened in the last 24 hours or so. It actually went up to, courtesy of Circa Sports, they say that it actually went up to 5.5. And some Vegas Insider, obviously some of the sites that Vegas Insider list, they had it went to 5.5 and then came back down to 5. So, obviously, if you got it at 3, I think, or whatever it was, that's a good number.
Yeah,
I mean, I still I think my prediction has Texas winning by more than 5. I think Texas could cover that number. It just seems disrespectful almost, and like I almost feel uncomfortable with how confident we all are in Texas's advantages over a top 5 Georgia team in the, I think, toward the tail end of their dynastic run, but. Who knows? It could be in the middle of their dynastic run. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's it does seem straight up disrespectful. But I think that's how impressed people are with Texas, and that's probably just a lot of money coming in on the Texas side. People are, like I said, are high on the horns.
They really I don't know if it could be something related to Isaiah Bond, where they would bump it a little bit because they feel he is going to play in the game, or if it's somebody on Georgia's side they feel is not going to play in the game. That's normally when you see a swing like that, it's, or at least, maybe a couple more points, you see a swing and it's a player or two that are making a difference. We
talked about the injury to Munden yesterday.
Yeah.
But he was out. See, thinking about the Georgia guys, they've been out for a while. I mean,
you weren't surprised.
Yeah, they've been out. I mean, I would say, okay, so here's the injury availability report. I keep saying the injury report, but it basically is.
They have to have different names for everything in college.
I know.
Too many timeouts. It's the availability report. Everything's got to be a little different.
Yeah. They got to be. Yeah, they got to. I don't know why, but they got to tweak it to make it specific to their own little sport. I get it. Okay, so for Georgia, Roderick Robinson, the running back, Smell Munden, who we talked about yesterday, he's been their 3rd year starting linebacker. He's out. And he's been out for a couple of games, I believe. Branson Robinson, another running back, out. Here's where to get to the guys who are questionable. Tate Radledge is questionable, but he's been out. He's the offensive lineman that got hurt earlier in the year. And Jared Wilson he's been out I think the last couple of weeks. He's a center, I believe, for Georgia, and he's probable. So Tate Radledge, got two starting offensive linemen. One's questionable and one's probable. So Jared Wilson is probable. That's a good sign for them. And I'll say if it's Tate Radledge, like he's been out for a while already. So maybe it's a Smell Munden Jr. And then maybe you said Sark did say Isaiah. Here's the Texas side of this report. It says Derek Williams Jr., CJ Baxter, Christian Clark, Velton Gardner, Trevor Gooseby. That's a little bit surprising. The backup tackle for Texas, he's out too. So all those guys are out that I just named. Derek Williams Jr., CJ Baxter, Christian Clark, Felton Gardner, Trevor Gooseby, all out. Yeah. 3 of those are running backs. And Derek Williams, that's new. Obviously, that's coming from the Oklahoma game, and he's out. And then it says Isaiah Bond, questionable. But Sark did remark yesterday that he practiced and looked good.
Yes.
Or look good for for a guy that's injured. I don't know if he looked good as he's looked, but probably look good for a guy that's injured. So maybe if he's questionable, maybe today we get probable. Whenever you get a probable, maybe that's a good sign that he's going to play. So maybe that is it. It's just those other guys from Georgia, they've been dealing with those injuries for a while. I will say those offensive line injuries, those are definitely the most impactful for Georgia right now. Here's a stat for you about those injuries, and we'll, of course, break down this matchup in more detail next segment, actually, we go behind the burn orange curtain. but their running game right now, Georgia's running game, they're in like the 90s when it comes to rushing yards per game. They're around 62nd, around there in yards per carry. It is not a dominant rushing game. And I think a lot of it is because of the injuries on the offensive line.
Yeah.
The last 2 weeks without Ratledge, who's been out for a while, and without Wilson, who's missed the last 2 games. So let's take the last 2 weeks with both of them have been out. Georgia's averaging just zero. They're averaging 0.7 yards before contact per carry. When they run through the center and the right guard gaps, basically when they in the interior, basically half of your interior runs, most of your interior runs, when they run through the center gaps or the right guard gaps. The average their average in 2023 was 2.6. So they were averaging almost 2 yards more before contact last season on those interior runs than they have the last 2 weeks. And it can be directly linked to the injury to 2 of their starting offensive linemen. And if you go look, here's another stat for you, and this is more all season long. So to give you more context, if you go look at Georgia's ranks in running back yards per attempt between the tackles, interior runs we're talking about here, versus FBS opponents, Georgia's 83rd in yards per attempt running the football between the tackles. Game by game numbers, Clemson, they were 3 yards per attempt. Kentucky was better. It was 4.9, 4.1 versus Mississippi State, though. 4.7 versus Auburn. They ranked 11th last year and 16th the year before in running back yards per attempt in between the tackles. And I think it's mostly because of the injuries. So if those guys, if they don't get, at least one of them back, and if both of them are out, Texas has a huge advantage there.
Yeah, and they brought in
the way they've played in the interior D line.
They brought in Trevor Etienne over the offseason from Florida, and he's been all right. He just hasn't broke a lot of big ones, which is really where you want to have your running back be able to break a few big ones. He just hasn't done it a lot. He's done it a couple times this season. But for the most part, he's been rather consistent. He's been around 4 to 5 yards a carry.
Yeah.
So he's been there.
Yeah.
So he's still a guy you have to worry about a lot because they are going to be able to run and pick up first downs. But he hasn't been able to break a bunch of big ones out on you and, make that game-changing run. So if you can keep him to 4 yards a carry, then you feel a little bit better about him because they're not running him a ton either. He's not really getting more than 15 carries a game in any game. So you say they're not going to over-rely on him. They want to throw the ball a little bit more. They want to be more active in the passing game. You just have to make sure when he gets the ball, he doesn't get one of those big runs that he's capable of doing. And that'll slow down that run game considerably because I think Kirby knows the same thing as Sark knows, which is I don't want to have to play a slow, methodical pace against this other team because the more I do, the more chances something goes wrong. The more chances we take a loss on a play or we get a penalty on a play or we turn the ball over. So I just want to get down the field. So if I have to go 3 to 4 yards a play, I don't want to do that. Yeah. I don't want to trust my team to go 3 or 4 yards all the way down the field. So I'd rather try and get some chunk yardage in there. And so if they can kind of slow down Etienne, again, it's getting those hits at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage to slow him down enough. If you can get those types of plays against Georgia and make them just a passing team and kind of try and take away that run, that'd be big for Texas to make them more one-dimensional.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Because they've thrown it this year a lot more. They've leaned on Carson Beck. Makes sense. The best quarterback, or at least the quarterback with the highest upside, I should say, in terms of NFL upside that Kirby Smart has had in his dynastic run so far. So they've been, and when you get down in games, so of course that basically the second half of that Bama game, they just went pass heavy because they were down so much. So maybe that skewed some of the numbers, but I'm with you. When I watch it, it seems like to me they're leaning more on the pass these days. And I think that is a result of just Carson Beck and how good he is. as a prospect overall. So we shall see. It's the best quarterback Texas faced. We'll talk about that when we go behind the Burnham's curtain. We'll start to flip. We've talked a lot about the Texas offense versus Kirby Smart's defense and that chess match going on between those two guys. But we'll get to the Texas defense, which is the best defense in the country statistically, going up against that Georgia offense, which doesn't really have. I mean, they don't have an identity offensively, in my opinion. They just have, you know, great athletes, dynamic athletes at different spots. But that's one thing about even the Georgia defense, really. Like, that's one thing that I have talked about when you talk about the matchups Texas had this year with good to great defenses. Michigan's defense, the identity of it was the front seven, best D tackle duo in college football. You can't run on Michigan. That's their identity. That's their MO. You ain't gonna run on us, but Texas threw it on them, so it didn't matter. The Oklahoma defense, what was their identity? We kept telling you all week, right? Most opportunistic defense, one of the most in the country. They top 3 in takeaways, top 10 in sacks at the time, top 15 in tackles for loss. That was their identity. I would say Georgia's defense, although if you look at, I think it's a top 20 scoring defense, so not, I don't want to be disrespectful. That defense is legit. And the Kirby Smart is one of the best, if not the best defensive mind in college football. Now that Nick Saban has retired. But you look at sacks, they're 65th in sacks. It's not elite. You look at tackles for loss, 55th. Takeaways, they're 110th. They're just not, they don't have an elite quality about them that I would say, oh, that's their identity. This is what they hang their hat on. You go against them, you got to make sure that you safeguard against this specific, tactic or strategy. They don't really have that. They're just very sound and fundamentally. And I said they do, even red zone defense. You would think, they must be bend but don't break. They're not great or elite in red zone defense either. They're just average in red zone defense. So that to me is what's different about the Georgia defense. It is a good defense. Of course it is. It's a Kirby Smart defense. Like I said, I think, you look at scoring defense overall, it'll be the best defense ranked now that Texas played. But those other defenses had an identity. They had something that they hang their hat on, that they do as well, if not better than everybody else in the country. This Georgia defense doesn't really have that. And then you'd be like, well, so they must have, they got elite personnel. They really do. I mean, across the board, but they still don't have like that war daddy that they usually do. Like, oh man, that dude, he's unblockable. Mikael Williams is probably as close as he gets, but he's been hurt all year.
Yeah.
Now he's not on that injury report, and that's good for them. That's bad news for Texas because he's a dude. I mean, he was somebody that they were talking about. I mean, he still ended up being a first round pick, but that's his ceiling, and that's what he's projected to be. But he's been hurt all season long, so he hadn't really played a lot. I don't know how fresh he's going to be for the Texas game, so his snaps have been limited. But on the D line, that defensive end, Mikael Williams, you got to watch him. Like, that's somebody to watch out for. But they haven't. They're leading. The guy that leads them in sacks right now is Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. He's got 13 pressures, and I think he's got 3 sacks so far on the season, which is, I mean, that's impressive. But usually for Georgia, you'd be like, oh man, they got some war daddy that's unblockable. And because they're dealing with a lot of injuries, and because they've had a lot of guys get suspended because of misbehavior and misconduct and stuff like that, that may have affected it too, some of these numbers. But like I said, it's one of those defenses that it doesn't have, like I said, that elite quality about it, but they are really good defense. So I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that they usually, there's something that you point out specifically that makes them unique, and there's not really anything that makes this defense unique, in my opinion. Even personnel, Malachi Stark's a really good player. Like I just said, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, like I said, 3 sacks, 13 quarterback pressures. He's a good player, and they got good players. I mean, they got dudes. Mikael Williams, if he plays and he's healthy, he's a dude. I'm just talking about the identity of the defense in a sense. So, but like I said, still for Texas, it'll be a hell of a test. We've talked about how Texas can attack that Georgia defense. So on the flip side, let's talk about the Georgia offense and how Texas is going to defend that Georgia offense, because there is something that's somewhat concerning in the matchup for Texas, and it's that they haven't played a high level quarterback like this yet. Not yet. They haven't done
Yeah.
it, and this will probably be the best quarterback they face in terms of the NFL upside and projection all season long. And how does Texas defend them? How do they try to pressure them? We'll talk about that on the other side when we go behind the burnt orange curtain. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Hey, welcome back to the Rodcast. It's time to talk some Texas, Georgia, even though we've been talking Texas, Georgia all week long on the continue the conversation. But this time flip to the Texas defense versus that Georgia offense. We've been talking a lot about the Texas offense versus that Georgia defense, which, it is the marquee matchup, I would say, but between two of the most respected minds on either side of the ball for Sark and for Kirby Smart. But the Texas defense right now is the most elite unit in this game. All right. Before the season started, if I had told you, all right, you know what, in that Texas Georgia game, it will feature the number one team in the country with the number one defense in the country. most people would have been like, yeah, of course, Georgia's gonna be number one with the number one defense, and it's not that case. All right, it's the Longhorns who are the number one defense, but they haven't been tested in the passing game, and I do believe the Texas defense is elite. I keep using that term. Right, I think they earned that, allowing only 3 touchdowns in the first 6 games. But as I always throw it out there, the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size, but is that they haven't faced a quarterback of this ilk, and they haven't really faced a dynamic passing game, and that's what Georgia can be. Georgia can be a dynamic passing game. I mean, you go look at it. Michigan only has 7 passes of 20 yards or more on the season. Oklahoma's got 8. Louisiana Monroe's got 10, and those 3 schools that Texas played, they are in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're in the bottom 5 in the country in all the FBS in teams to have passing plays of 20 yards or more. Teams with the fewest passing plays of 20 yards or more. They're in the bottom 5. Like literally, Michigan is at the 134th. Oklahoma's 133rd. And UL Monroe is 129th. They are the worst vertical passing offenses in the country, like the worst. So Texas is good, but they have faced the most dog-ish passing offenses in the country. Like half the schedule is that. Can we be honest about this? 2 things can be true at the same time. They are elite. They're allowing if you go look at it, Texas pass defense, it's second, I think, in the country in pass defense, pass efficiency defense. They're second in the country. They're allowing the fewest yards per attempt without pressure as well. I mean, no matter which way you're looking at it, the Texas defense statistically has proven that it's an elite group. There's no doubt. So I'm not saying that's not. I've recognized. I've told you guys they're more buttoned up. They're more situationally aware. Their technique and fundamentals are more sound. You can tell they're communicating a whole lot better. But here's another side of the 68 Power 4 teams. If you look at EPA, all right, we're just looking at offensive EPA of the 68 Power 4 teams. The Sooners are 68th. The Wolverines are 59th, and Mississippi State's 47th. So it's like I said, 2 things can be true. This is the thing about Carson Beck that Texas has to worry about, because Texas really hasn't had a team that hasn't had a quarterback or a team that can throw the football downfield on them. So they just haven't been tested. They've defended 16, according to Pro Football Focus, 16 passes of 20 yards or more down the field, and teams have completed just 5 of them. Now, Davis Warren completed the most because he had some of those kind of Hail Mary plays where he's running to the sidelines, chunks it up for Colston Loveland, and he comes down with it. Maybe had another one at the end of the game. So he actually ended up completing the most because they were in basically survival mode the whole game, but Texas controlled that game. So it wasn't like it was a problem for Texas. By any matter of fact, Texas, I think, was just once they got the lead and knew that Michigan could only do so much on offensively. They were basically a Hail Mary passing game. That's all they could do. That's the only thing that really worked for them. And they made some of those plays, but it was nothing to be concerned about. The concern is that Texas just hasn't really had to defend many deep balls. They're defending on average like 3 deep balls a game, a little under 3 deep balls a game. With Georgia, they're going to throw about 7 of them. That's what they're averaging right now. Carson Beck's got 41 on the season. Passes of 20 yards or more. And this is actually air yards in the air, right? So deep downfield. And if you go look at just 20-plus yard passing plays, I was just talking about how inept Michigan, Oklahoma, and ULM are in those departments. 20-plus yard passing plays, Georgia is 3rd in the country, behind Miami and Ole Miss. If you look at the 30-plus yard pass plays in the country, Georgia is 3rd, behind Ole Miss and Coastal Carolina. They get some chunk yardage plays downfield. Now, all those are not all him completing air yard passes, 20 yards or more down the field. Sometimes they're in intermediate passes, guys catch and run because they got to get athletes. But they have an actual vertical passing game. And it's one of the better ones in the country just because they have one of the better quarterbacks in the country. And they do have some good athletes on the outside. We'll talk about those guys. But that is going to be to me, a big factor in Texas game planning to defend this Georgia offense. They also run a lot of double moves. You heard Sark talking about that. So they try to throw some deception in there too if you're overly aggressive. But how does Texas defend those 7, 8 deep balls that are coming from Georgia? Because when they get one-on-ones, they're going to take them. And there's been a couple of times in Texas, they will have one-on-ones because Texas ends up in one-on-one situations. They trust their DBs and who wins. All right. I think they're going to Georgia could win a few. There's no doubt. We've seen some wide receivers get behind Texas DBs a couple of times this year. They don't really have the quarterback to complete those passes. They don't have the offensive proficiency to be able to complete those passes, but we've seen them get behind Texas a couple of times. So that'll be, to me, one of the big, because Texas last year, that was your big liability on defense. That was your Achilles heel. You could not defend the deep ball. Remember Washington? Couldn't defend the deep ball. Couldn't defend the deep ball even in the spring game. Texas couldn't defend the deep ball very well. Hell, even against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game, Texas didn't defend the deep ball really well. They had trouble defending the deep ball then. And have they remedied those issues? I believe they have. It seems like they have. They're better just across the board, fundamentally in terms of their technique, their leverage, like I said, situational awareness, the communication, all those things would lead us to believe, yes, they are better in that aspect. But Kim Kardashian, besides but is they have not been tested. We don't know. We think. There's no evidence really other than what we've seen, and what you've seen is a distorted sample. It's not those offenses. I just pointed out to you, they have literally struggled with the forward pass. So this is a team that does not struggle with the forward pass. They got a quarterback that knows how to maneuver in the pocket, create time, manipulate defenders with his eyes, and he got athletes on the outside to throw the football to who can create separation and get open. Different beast. So that is the question is, how do you pressure that guy? What do you do because all quarterbacks, they deteriorate under pressure. All right. You see them all, drop in terms of substandard metrics when they're under pressure. That's across the board. From Tom Brady, the GOAT, to Patrick Mahomes. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. So how do you create that pressure on this quarterback? And I wouldn't blitz as much. I would blitz some, but I wouldn't. Last game, you had your highest blitz rate of the season versus a young Michael Hawkins, and it makes sense. Put a lot on a young quarterback's plate, speed up their process, give them a lot to, have to diagnose pre-snap, and then a lot to have to process post-snap, and usually young quarterbacks will panic. Carson Beck is a veteran quarterback, and when you look at his numbers versus the blitz, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country versus the blitz. Cleans up his looks for him. Time to throw, and he drops, he gets rid of the ball really quickly, and his completion percentage is still pretty high. The only thing that's not really, I would say that's not above average, way above average in terms of the metrics versus the blitz for Carson Beck would be yards per attempt and average depth of target. But that's because he's getting rid of the ball quickly and he's getting it out to a hot route. So it's still something that he has a solution baked in, and pre-snap, he does a great job of being able to decipher the disguise and what the defense is doing. If you're going to blitz him, we just know the success rate may not be very high. You got to create organic pressure on him. And I think the key to that, in my opinion, for Texas is what you do with Anthony Hill and what you do with Colin Simmons. And you did a marvelous job in the Oklahoma game of moving those guys around and putting them in different positions, putting them in as a movable chess piece, putting them in the positions to maximize their talent and find matchups, engineer matchups, all right, that they can easily win. Right. So you can weaponize them. He had Colin Simmons playing middle linebacker at one time, had Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill coming off the edge at times. It was higher blitz rates than you normally would have. But like I said, I think that was more opponent specific. But I think those guys are the way you create your organic pressure. You got Baron Terrell and Ethan Burke, and you got Trey Moore. You got guys that can rush the passer. But I think those two specifically, we have already witnessed that if you put them in the right position, they can give you huge returns as pass rushers. So to me, that's real. I want to see something exotic, and I think we will, about ways to maximize and weaponize those two guys, so you can have more of an organic pass rush against Carson Beck, because you don't want to have to blitz against him because it leaves you a little bit exposed defensively. And if you blitz defensively and they pick it up and you are one-on-one out there without a lot of help, who knows, they can end up making some plays. And I think for Texas, one of the biggest improvements on defense, and there have been a lot of them, is they're number one in the country in explosive plays allowed. Like, they don't allow explosive plays at all. So that's something to watch too. If Georgia's starting to get some chunk yardage plays, to Patrick's point last segment, that's something Texas hasn't dealt with, and that is something that will kind of disrupt the formula for Texas defensively, because they want you to have to march down the field, and then in that at one point Texas will be able to make a play, put you behind the chains, get you off schedule, and either make a splash play, a havoc play, get a takeaway. That has been Texas MO, and they've been able to get off the field. You go look at stop rate. I didn't even bring this up, but Texas stop rate right now is the best in the country. Essentially, stop rate is the amount of drives that end in a takeaway, that end in a punt. Basically, a takeaway, a turnover on downs, or a punt. Basically, whatever drive ends without the offense scoring. That is a stop, and Texas has an 87.1% stop rate. Basically, it's the best in the country. And they only allow 0.51 points per drive. So explosive plays, if they're getting explosive plays, that means they're, I think, getting those chunk yards. If they get them, it'll probably be because of Carson Beck throwing the football deeper downfield, taking advantage of those intermediate to deep passes. I went and looked at every individual deep pass for him. How about this? When he throws the football 20 yards or more down the field, he's got 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. When he throws the football to the intermediate area of the field, he's got 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And when he throws the football to the short area of the field, 0 to 10 yards, he's got 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's got more touchdowns and fewer interceptions throwing to the deepest area of the field than any other area of the field. Seems like he's pretty comfortable throwing to the deep area of the field. he's got more touchdowns and fewer interceptions throwing it 20 yards or more down the field than he's got throwing to the intermediate area of the field or the short area of the field. And with Quinn, it's probably the exact opposite. Like, he's actually probably more effective on the deeper routes, just in terms of, than most quarterbacks are, in terms of this touchdown interception ratio too. So that's the element that we're not sure about, and we don't know how Texas is going to respond to it. I think they're up to the task, but this will be the midterm. Everything before this, as I've said, open book test, and everybody passes an open book test. You should get an A. You should be A+ on your open book test. All right. You shouldn't miss many with the open book test. All right. We come back. We'll get into the topic for the big fat poll of the day. We'll also have your musically themed day of the week. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn.
Back in the Rodcast on a Thursday morning, and that means it's a new theme Thursday. This week's theme, I decided I was going to do artists from Georgia, but there's way too many good artists from Georgia, so I had to up the challenge a little bit. So this is people from Georgia, famous artists from Georgia, singing about Georgia. So it is to double down on it, since we're playing Georgia this weekend. It is famous artists from Georgia singing about Georgia. So there's some famous Georgia songs that aren't on here because they're not from people from Georgia, and there's some famous Georgia people that aren't on here because they don't have songs about Georgia.
I like it. Yeah, that's a challenge, man. Yeah, I like how you always challenge.
You're trying to whittle it down so I don't have to make hard decisions of who to play and not play. This whittled it down enough that I could make it pretty easy. So that'll be your theme of the day. Let's get to the big fat poll of the day. 512-447-3776 is the text line, and we'll get this posted up on X at the Horn ATX.
Fat poll of the day on the Horn.
Big fat poll of the day today. We'll go with, we asked you yesterday, how many points will Georgia score against Texas? So today we'll ask you, how many points will Texas score against Georgia? How will that Texas offense do against that Georgia defense? And this is where we start to get into how cocky are we about this offense? How cocky are we that this offense should have no problem moving through? I gave you, these are the four options I'll give you, Rod. 0 to 14, 15 to 24, 25 to 34, and 35 plus.
I think I had them at like between. I think I had them like 31. So I had them.
That's what I figure. I figure that third one's usually around the sweet spot. So 25 to 34, as I feel around the sweet spot. I believe I have to look again now with the new numbers, but when I looked before. That with the over under and the split, it was supposed to be like 27-30. So now maybe like 31, 32, 27 or something like that for the over under and what they think Texas will end up doing in the game. But they have the Texas around 30 as well. Vegas does. So that would be around your sweet spot is 25 to 34. But you could say maybe this Georgia defense plays better than people think, and it'll be more of a defensive battle, and it goes 15 to 24. Maybe you think that Texas has no problem and they still get the points. And even if Georgia does play good defense, they have enough weapons and enough ability. They'll score 35 plus. So that is our question for today. How many points will Texas score against Georgia? And then we have to, compare with how many points Georgia scores and see how many people presented an option where Texas does not win this game.
Oh, no, it's possible Texas loses this
game. Well,
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
You don't play the number 5 team in the country and then go, cakewalk, no problem.
Yeah, but like I said, the line is moving in favor of Texas, so people are confident in the Longhorns. And I admit that I'm confident right now in the Longhorns. So maybe that's the key, is that you're going to have a underdog mentality from a blue blood dynastic program like Georgia, and they can use that to really incentivize their guys to go earn some respect on the field and go out there and pull the upset. Georgia, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think Texas is just a better team right now.
No, and I mean it's going to be the interesting battle of quarterbacks when we talk about both these quarterbacks. This is a matchup that I saw the numbers of how many scouts are going to be in the building and how many NFL personnel, and I think it's like over 400 people. I think they said over 20 teams have asked for for scouting, and then media is going to be filled out, and credentials are just going to be. There's going to be a ton of people that are trying to get to this game to scout this game and see, because you have two, projected first round picks in Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers as well. And so I think there's something that those offenses are going to want to show out in this game, knowing how many scouts are out there. The defenses both want to show that they can shut down a quarterback of that magnitude. Yep. And for Georgia to say, no, that's the number one offense. We feel they're really, but we shut them down. And that's what SEC football is about. There is also that whole SEC football thing, which I don't think it matters as much to a Georgia and Texas as it may matter to some other schools. I think both those teams are going to care more about the name on the jersey than the name on the patch. But, there is still some of that. Like, they think they can walk in here and win the SEC the first season and just beat up. But no, not doing that. We've had to be in this for too long. We're going to show them who runs this. So you could have that part in there too. But but we'll see. How many points will Texas score against Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia is a top 20 scoring defense. So, I mean, I went on the rant earlier that they don't really have a unique identity, but they are still a top 20 scoring defense.
Yeah.
So it's a Kirby Smart coach defense, and he'll have a plan for almost everything Texas hangs their hat on. That's what Kirby Smart does really well. Like he'll have a plan for the wide zone. We talked about that yesterday. He'll have a plan for the RPO. I heard him talking about his situating his safeties versus RPO teams in Texas, an RPO based passing game. And essentially, he tells his safeties when you play RPO teams that you don't backpedal out. You play from 10 to 12 yards instead of 15 to 18 yards. You play at a more shallow depth, and you shuffle instead of backpedaling. And once you identify run, you run through the tag area. So the tag is the route on the run pass option. And so you run through the tag. So you identify where the tag is as a safety and where the quarterback is throwing. And then you run through that catch area. And so it'll take you either closer to the football when he catches it, or you could potentially get there with the football and intercept it. But he's got his safeties basically running to be a forced run defender, but their angle is through the receiver's route trajectory. It's actually, I'm sorry, that's actually pretty brilliant. I didn't even think about that. It makes sense. Like the run fits are situated so when the safety comes down, he's coming down, like I said, at that angle to intercept or to meet the tag route. And Sark only wants one tag on his RPOs, like one pass concept on his RPOs. So you know where it's like, oh, that's the pass concept. I figured it out. That's what the quarterback is throwing. And instead of you having 8 yards of space between the receiver when he catches the football on a run RPO, there's like 2 or 3. He played safety, so this is kind of from his own personal experience. I don't know how much he experienced RPO, but just his own personal experience at safety. So he comes up with that. That's his like plan for he's got like a baked in solution for RPOs. He's got baked in solutions for everything you're good at. That's what Kirby Smart's that's his strength as a coordinator, or so Corey is a play designer and head coach, I should say. But when he was a coordinator too, like that's what his superpower was. And he'll have a plan for Sark stuff too. He'll have a plan for the RPO, plan for the wide zone, everything.
It's the battle back and forth of who can make the most adjustments in game and have tricks up their sleeve that you think, I know how you call this, so you want to get that and get your safety up. So I'm just going to send my wide receiver somewhere else.
Yeah, I think, yes, I agree with you. That's why I think Sark has a fake RPO. I'm not making he has an RPO that basically it's essentially a play action pass, but he wants everybody to think it's an RPO. So the safety, like that guy, will take the angle, and all you got to do is tell the wide receiver, are we doing glance and go? Are we going to do a skinny post and go? Or we're going to do a slant and out, and you catch the safety slipping, and then boom, you can get everybody, going one way, deceived, and then have their keys and work against them and break tendency that way. So yeah, Sark knows that, and that'll be when does he put in the fake RPO? And that might be one of the big plays in the game. Yeah, because the way that he knows Kirby Smart has his safeties attacking the RPO game. Fascinating stuff. I'm with you. I think Texas scores 31 though. I got them scoring 31.
Okay, so you got them that 25-34. You're not going full on. We got a few on the text line.
So they're gonna get like more than 35.
We have most people are in the 25-34, but some people, we gotta appreciate it. Drink some Kool-Aid on a Thursday morning.
How much did they score against Nick Saban in the second when they went to Bama? I forgot. I gotta go check that out.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, because the point is those defenses are related. I mean, they're cousins, as we told you yesterday. Like those defenses are related to one another. So, and that was at Alabama, whether you've been home, and I guess you can have the conversation whether this offense is better than last year's.
Be 34-24 was the score in that game.
Yeah, so right, is right. You're right.
That number.
You're right there in that number, man. You're right there in that sweet spot. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good stuff there. All right. We come back. We'll get into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll take a little bit of a breather from Texas, Georgia. Then get back to some Texas, Georgia conversation. But I want to preview the Texans game against the Packers. The Packers are being downright disrespectful to the Texans. They're doing something in this game that You're supposed to do it against scrubs. You don't do this in a game against a team that you're expecting to compete to win the conference. So we'll get into that. Well, I think it's a little bit disrespectful. We'll get into that. We'll also talk about the what I think is one of the big stories in the NFL right now, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers changing quarterbacks. Remember that Sunday night football game I said was going to be a bit of a dud? No, it was no sex appeal to it. Well, after the Jets acquired Devontae Adams and now the Steelers are talking about changing quarterbacks, now you got a lot of storylines in that Sunday night football game. So we'll get into that a little bit because I got a historic nugget about that situation with the Steelers. Something unprecedented is about to happen. We'll do that and also dive into Rod's rant on the other side right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday edition of the Rodcast. And of course, with the Longhorns getting ready to take on the Georgia Bulldogs, a top 5 matchup, biggest matchup in college football this weekend. My man Patrick has been inspired to play songs from artists who are from Georgia singing about Georgia.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go.
It's
Boom.
Gladys
Oh,
Knight,
man.
Midnight Train to Georgia. We had Ray Charles, Georgia
Love
on
it.
my mind. I mean,
Good stuff.
simple stuff, you know. It
Uh-huh.
gets
That's
a little
hey,
bit, you know, a little bit
I
more
love it.
convoluted as we get going, but it still works.
I think it's brilliant, honestly. That it's so simple. It's simplistically brilliant. That's what it is. All right, it's just what it is. Damn it, I love it. All right, so that's the new theme for New Theme Thursday. Artists from Georgia singing about Georgia. They love Georgia. Artists from Texas do that too. You can do that. Texas
Yeah,
artists from Texas talk a lot about Texas.
they do. But it's like you couldn't put
Right?
in like REM's a really famous band from like Athens, Georgia, but
And they never talk about
but they
Georgia.
don't have any songs like especially good songs
No,
that are
Georgia.
about
Yeah,
Georgia or areas in Georgia really kind of got
yeah.
stuff
That's
that's
a good
like
point.
kind of about it, but not enough that I was like, all right, you guys aren't getting in.
Yeah, I need you to be obvious
So
when you're
I
talking
still
about
got. I
Georgia.
mean, they're all still big hits that I got left lined
Yeah.
up. So we'll be good.
No. That's it. No, I can't wait to see how many more. Those are the two obvious ones to me. I was like, oh,
Yes.
those came to mind initially when you introduced the topic, and now I'm like, okay, now I'm thinking about. But I feel there's going to be some hip hop artists in here
There.
because
Yes. Yeah.
yes,
I
because
mean, there has to
they
be.
love. Yes, they love talking about Georgia, and yeah, I don't know if is it. Hold up, is it? They have to talk about the state, or can you
No.
talk about the city
I
of
mean,
Atlanta
you're
in
talking
Georgia?
about cities, and yeah, you're talking about
Oh, okay, I
things
got you.
in
All right,
Georgia.
yeah. All
Yes.
right.
No, because if
Oh
I
yeah,
just went
then
Georgia,
okay. Now,
the music wouldn't be
yeah.
as good. So you have to,
Yes. I
alter.
got you. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, because hip hop it is sometimes specific to cities in Georgia. But there you go.
Yes.
All right. So we'll get to more of the topic for. We'll get to that, but that topic for the Big Fat Poll today, we'll also get that posted for you. And Patrick comes up with that as well. Patrick, what is the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day?
Big fat poll today. How many points will Texas score against Georgia? We gave you 4 options: 0 to 14, 15 to 24, 25 to 34, and 35 plus. You can throw in there.
Yeah. Right now I got 25 to 34. I think that's just it just makes the most sense for me. Now the question is, will Quinn start slow? Will he come out of the gate? Will we get sharp Quinn who's in rhythm and on time, balls out, confident? That's just that we didn't see that early. We saw Quinn get into somewhat of a groove later in the game and find his groove, but if up against Georgia and Kirby Smart's defense, and Kirby Smart, like I said, he's as respected and as brilliant as any defensive mind in college football now. Will he come up with something to confuse him? Now, I will say Brent Venables' defense is a lot different than Kirby Smart's defense. Brent Venables plays mind games with you.
Yeah.
That's what his defenses are built on: disguise, pre-snap movement, just a lot. Basically, he's trying to confuse and discombobulate opposing quarterbacks. That's one of the purposes of the defense. Kirby Smart's defense, although there are some of those elements, he has just been recruiting better guys than you. And just wants guys, we're fundamentally sound, my guys will win against your guys. My guys are better. So we're gonna play some fundamentally sound football. If you know what we're gonna do, fine, but we're gonna be so good at it that I don't know if you're going to be able, I don't know if you're going to be able to schematically make up that ground, because not only are we going to be better athletes and better football players, but we're going to be coached with meticulous, coaching and detail with our technique and fundamentals. And that's what they were. And that's what they have been, I should say, Georgia. But I will say this year, they don't seem as detail oriented as they have been in the past. They don't seem as disciplined as they have been in the past. And I think that's reflected off the field and, on the field too. So that's the difference. But that's usually because that's why Quinn may, like against Alabama's been like that. Nick Saban, he doesn't play a lot of games with you. There's not a lot of manipulation, in terms of the disguise and pre-snap. They're just better because he's a better coach. These guys are, they're coached up better. And there is some tendency breakers, I'm sure, but Venables' defenses they're very, very, I think they're very much emphasizing and prioritizing playing mind games with the quarterbacks from the jump.
Yeah.
And that's why when Texas lined up and just started running the football a little bit, they had way more success popping some of the runs. And then Sark said, you know what, the hell with all the fancy stuff. We'll just try to run the football and just go win the game. And they did. And that's why even last year, right? Think about 2 years ago, or at least last year, 2023, with Brent Venables' defense, they were able to make some plays because they confused Quinn a little bit. He threw some passes a little bit early, some errant throws. That's what that defense is. That's why his defense is always top in takeaways. Georgia's not. Georgia's like 110th in takeaways. They ain't taking the football away because they ain't playing a lot of games with guys. It's just
no, and they don't want you to
they're
have
top 20 in scoring defense.
Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier about that too. Of how long do you want to have the football in your hands? Because the bad things that can happen if you have to take a long 15, 20 play drive. Georgia doesn't allow 15, 20 play drives often. So you maybe get over the top, but normally against most teams, if you're trying to go that long, they get you to punt the ball before they get a turnover.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, exactly. No, they're just a sound defense, but that's why I think Quinn, there's a chance, much like against Alabama, that you'll get a sharper Quinn early because Sark's game plan will probably be a little bit more, in my opinion, it has a higher chance for success versus those types of defenses than one that's playing a lot of games with disguises and with pre-snap movement like a Venables defense. But each one has their own, strengths and I'm sure vulnerabilities, but it's a different style of a defense than what Brent Venables has. So I think that, in my opinion, that helps Quinn. That means Quinn could get off to a better start because you got more static looks. You just got to worry about just getting beat straight up. A lot of times with just better players with Georgia.
No, and I think that rust thing is going to wear off a little bit. You'll have him feel a little bit better getting underneath. I'm sure there was part of it last week too of Quinn coming out and, it's a non-contact injury that he did throwing the ball. So maybe you're a little bit more cautious about throwing the ball and, kind of like after you hurt your ankle, you kind of walk light on it, even though it's fine. That same concept that maybe you're pulling a pass a little bit more, or trying to put just because you're trying to figure out how you feel. And by the, once the adrenaline starts running, you're good. You can kind of narrow it down a little bit more. I think, now you have another week of practice. You got another win under your belt. It becomes a little bit easier to not start off missing passes that poorly.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And as I said, I don't expect that to be something that is of concern in this game. I think you'll get the best version of Quinn early on in this matchup too. And I think that'll be a priority for Sark. Like, no, this time I got to make sure that, and it wasn't that stuff wasn't open in the Oklahoma game. It's just that Quinn, like I said, he was just having an off day early. That I think it was more rust than anything. Some people may think it's an injury, but even if it is the injury, he's got another week to heal and get ready. But I don't necessarily think it was that. I think he actually, it was just after 3 weeks, damn near a month, without real game action. I think you saw the bad footwork. You saw some of the bad mechanics, stuff like that. We haven't seen from Quinn honestly in like a year. Like that was like 20, right? That was like first year Quinn stuff. Well, with not having your feet set and just kind of winging it out there, stuff like that, and throwing a little bit high. I think that was just Quinn reverting back to some things because of the time off, in my opinion. All right, but there you go. How many points will Texas score versus Georgia? Remember, the line has moved. Texas now favored by 5 in that matchup versus Georgia, which is crazy. We'll see if the line moves again after another availability report, and we'll give you some updates about that too. Georgia could end up having 2 starting offensive linemen out. That has been the case for them the last couple of weeks. One of those guys questionable, one of those guys probable for Georgia. So we'll talk more about that. But I do want to get some NFL discussion and talk about there's some big games, a lot of big games actually. We'll start with the one closest to home because the Texans have a statement opportunity, in my opinion, playing Green Bay. CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love, 2 of the best young quarterbacks in the game. And we'll talk about why I think the Green Bay Packers are being somewhat disrespectful to the Texans in this matchup, and we'll preview it a little bit too. We got Rod's Rant coming up next segment, and that'll be NFL related as well. I want to talk a little bit about the MVP race. We'll talk about the Heisman and the MVP race. We'll do them both. All right. We'll talk about basically the award given to the best player in college football and the award given to the best player in the NFL. And we'll talk about the early narratives that are developing there. We'll do that. But first, let's get the Horn headlines, and then we'll talk somewhat about this Texans Green Bay matchup. But let's get educated, informed, and updated on all the top stories today first with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB playoffs, the Dodgers got an 8-0 win over the Mets last night to take a 2-1 series lead in the NLCS. Walker Buehler pitched 4 innings, only allowing 3 hits and striking out 6, and the Dodgers bullpen was excellent the rest of the way en route to a shutout victory. Today, both series continue with the Guardians needing to get a win at home to get back in the series with the Yankees. And in the NFL, the Broncos will take on the Saints on Thursday Night Football with Sean Payton making his return to New Orleans for the first time since coming back to coaching. The Saints will try to get back in the winning column after losing the last 4 games without their starting quarterback Derek Carr, who is listed as doubtful for the game. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, Patrick, thank you for the Horn headlines. Appreciate those. All right, the Texans got a big game coming up versus the Green Bay Packers, and I saw that the Packers are they're going to unveil their all white, basically their version of the Stormtrooper uniforms versus the Texans. They're going to be in all white uniforms. So I think it's appropriate because I think a big part of this game is going to be how dirty the Texans can get Jordan Love's uniform. Just that simple. How dirty can they get it? Because he has been sacked, they said 12 times in 13 games. The Texans do have one of the better pass rushers in the NFL, but Jordan Love, one of the things that's really surprising about his game lately is he's been holding on to the ball actually, and making plays, but holding on to the ball a lot longer in terms of his time to throw. He entered week 6, 2.86 seconds was his time to throw. That was the 10th highest in the league, but he's still making big plays. He took 0 sacks last week. Despite being pressured 12 times in that game. He was 11 of 17, 174 yards and 3 touchdowns on dropbacks over 2.5 seconds against the Cardinals. So if you're the Texans, the hope is that, okay, if he's holding on to the ball, you've got time to get there, but your coverage on the back end has got to be on point. It's got to be tight. And maybe that's the concern, is that the Texans on the back end, maybe the Texans coverage may not be tight, but if it is, I think the Texans can get to Jordan Love. I think, to me, that in the end, that may be the storyline and the biggest factor in the game. You want the Packers to curse those uniforms, and you want to damn those uniforms for Packers fans, but they never want to see them again. Remember having the Longhorn fans with with Texas basketball and the black unis. What was that?
Oh,
the black
yeah,
uniform,
yeah.
Texas, was it Duke they played against then?
I can't remember, but I remember
Duke,
that
they were
it did not go well.
One. It did not, yeah, whatever it is. I don't know. The last time they won them, I think at one point it didn't go well. Either way, and then Longhorn basketball fans, every time you bring up those uniforms, they're like, "Oh no, please don't bring up those uniforms. They're cursed." Essentially, that's what you want to do if you're a Texans fan, or you want to curse those, or a Texans player. You want to curse those uniforms for Green Bay Packers fans. But the Packers, they've been throwing the football downfield. That's part of it. He holds the football longer, so they get a chance to throw it vertical. The Packers average damn near 4 passing plays of 20 yards or more per game. That's tied for the most in the league. And for Houston, that's, we've seen, at least early on in the season, that Houston's been susceptible. Their pass defense has been susceptible to some big plays downfield. So if he's holding on to the football and he's kept clean, I think the Texans are going to give up some big plays. They got to make sure they get to him early and often. Can't have those white jerseys, those white uniforms for them. They can't be clean. Texas got to dirty them up. One other thing to watch too. I mean, Green Bay, they are a team that's been able to make some plays defensively. You can actually, I think, move the football. I think Texans, especially with Joe Mixon, I know no Nico Collins, so that's a concern because their passing game isn't, of course, not as dangerous without Nico Collins. I mean, you're talking about the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the league. I mean, that's what C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins were before he got hurt. And so that changed the offense. But when you got Joe Mixon back and you got a healthy, also, got a healthy running back there, period, your running game, Damian Pierce as well. Now your offense has more balance to it. And even last week, they didn't need CJ Stroud to remember to save us CJ, my save us CJ rant, when the Texans were relying way too much on just save us CJ, which he can do, by the way. He is that good. But he threw a season high 3 touchdowns on Sunday, but he threw for a season low 192 yards, 6.2 yards per attempt in his first game without Nico. So you didn't have as many of the highlight blockbuster plays for CJ Stroud, because you didn't have the save us CJ moments where he's got to put the cape on, which he can do. But you had more balance overall in the offense. And without Nico Collins and, with Tank Dell now and him ascending into the number 2 role, and you got Stephon Diggs, the offense changed a little bit. But I think as long as Joe Mixon stays healthy, I think the offense that you presented last week may actually still be an offense that, with CJ Stroud playing at a high level, I still think you can score as many, if not more, points as you score when you're with Nico Collins in there. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just a different version of it. Remember how many runs they popped last week? Now, also keep in mind, I'll give Bobby Slowick some credit. He's changed the run game a little bit too. They're running now fewer of the zone blocking schemes, which are more of a characteristic of the Shanahan running scheme, or the Shanahan running game. But now, of course, they still have some of that, but they ran more power concepts, more wham, gap, counter schemes, more power schemes last week, and it worked out. They popped a few of them. Now, that could have been game plan specific, opponent specific, or it could be that the Texans have figured out that's going to be more of the identity, or that's going to be where they diverge from the Shanahan run scheme a little bit, or from the total Shanahan model, which everybody does. You can still keep the core principles, the conceptual signatures of that Shanahan offense, but then put your own spin on it, your cover version of that Shanahan offense. And remember, we think that Bobby Slowick had been struggling to figure that out. And by the way, Sean McVay did the same thing. When Sean McVay was with the Rams, at one point he started to, and even most recently, started to run more power and gap schemes, still from that Shanahan tree, but just maybe not as zone running heavy. And by the way, everybody has a diverse running game, so we're just talking about percentages here. But still, I think that may be something to watch this week for the Texans offense and that identity. What kind of schemes are running offense in terms of the run game?
Yeah. No, I'd be curious to see. I mean, this is a big one of, they've been able to beat some of these lower level teams. And so now you got to go on the road, beat a playoff team. Having Joe Mixon back, of course, is gigantic, because it is just a different Texans offense when they go and play on the road, when they play with Joe Mixon, when they don't. But this is one of those big tests where you have to say, can you go play with the best teams? Are you a playoff contender, or are you just a team that's going to be in the playoffs? And that's this is one of those tests to see which one you're going to be against a Green Bay team. And I agree. If they want to wear the whites, do it as how it was when Tennessee tried to wear the Oilers jerseys last year.
Right,
oh, you want to bring
go.
out your special thing for us? No, thank you.
Yeah, you're breaking out the special jerseys against the Texans. You got to make them pay for that. But yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately, can the Texans get to Jordan Love? That's my number one key to the game. When Jordan Love's under pressure, honestly, he's been great no matter what. But this season under pressure, 40% completion percentage, 6.8 interception rate. That's 28th in the league. But if you don't put pressure on him and he's sitting back there and he's got time to throw, he will make you pay. And that offense, they got a lot of weapons. They have almost too many weapons, I think, for the Texans to be able to cover, which is why you got to get to Jordan Love.
Yeah.
They're deep in terms of their wide receiving core and the weaponry they have. So I think for the Texans, offense, though, I really do like the offense and the way it looks. And I'm sorry, when you get Nico Collins back and you got Joe Mixon, it'll be something different too. because you really hadn't had. I mean, that's since the first week, and I don't know if we knew exactly what the identity of the offense was going to be the first week because we didn't know Nico Collins was going to be leading the NFL in receiving after that, the first few games of the season. But when he comes back, the offense now is going to look even different because you have to go through another transformation. You had the offense, without Joe Mixon, and it was just kind of the Nico Collins led offense and to save us CJ offense. And now you got this offense, which is different than the save us CJ offense with the, him and Nico leading the way on third downs and red zone. It's the CJ and Nico show. And now when you get, hopefully, knock on wood, all of them back healthy, it's going to have another identity shift and reinvention. It's going to be exciting. I'm saying for the better. I think it's good. Like, I think these are all, I think, just these are all patterns of growth for the offense. And ultimately, hopefully, toward the end of the season, if all those guys are healthy, then you're talking about being one of the best offenses in the league because you got a running game, you got a number one wide receiver, your number two could be a number one if need be, if a team tries to take away Nico, by any means necessary, rolling coverage or doubling him. Tank Dell would have asserted himself because of this time when Nico's off. So you get Tank Dell, as in that number 3 role with someone you can trust. Dalton Schultz still got to figure it out. We don't know what's going on with Dalton Schultz a little bit. I think he'll find his way, but Dalton Schultz, he's not giving you the return on the target share that you're giving him right now. I think that'll happen. And the offensive line is starting, to be more disciplined, number one, with the penalties. And I think the pass protection is getting better, but that could just be the running game. When the running game could just improve the overall pass protection anyway, because you're not as pass heavy as you were without Joe Mixon and without the running.
Yeah, no, and that O-line, this is another test for them because now you're back on the road. You're in a hostile environment. So, you get another test to make sure they stay disciplined and they stay ready. D'Amico said he got fixed. I mean, again, when anybody says he fixed something like that, question it because I'm like, that is a ongoing thing for the rest of the season. You got to just make sure your guys keep, staying in line and keep staying where they're being disciplined. So it'll be a big test to see if he's got them really there. If they can be under, 7-8 penalties for the game for the Texans, that's where you'd like them to be. I know that's, you like them to be under 5, but I think realistically 7 to 8 is where if we can get them down to, 6 penalties a game, that is, I think, you do pretty well on the road in Green Bay.
Yeah, they've had they've had fewer. I think the Texans penalties for the last 2 weeks. The Patriots, it was 4, Bills 7, and remember they had those 3 straight games where they had double-digit penalties, 12, 11, and 12. So they have got to remember. But you're right. It's not it ain't just it's fixed it. I fixed it. No, it's going to be something that they got to focus on all year long because it was something that was an issue last season and it was an issue at the beginning of this season. So I'm with you. I think that that especially on the road, that can be something that
because
really
you were at home for the Bills. You were on the road for New England, but it's New England.
Yeah.
It's not, those fans were not exactly ravenous going after you because it's New England. They were excited for Drake May. That was about it.
That was about it. No, you're right about that. I totally agree. Yeah, this will be there's no doubt. This will be a crazy, wild environment for the Texans. And, like I said, I'm looking forward to the moment for CJ Stroud. This is a big moment because he's got these opportunities this season where he's going to go up against the best quarterbacks in the league. He's got Patrick Mahomes down the line later on. He had Josh Allen, right?
Yep.
Josh Allen, the Josh Allen showdown. I don't say he won it. That's a big part of that is your defense has to help you out here. But he won that showdown. Let's see if he can win this showdown with Jordan Love because the NFL, they did a great job scheduling and matched the Texans up against some of the best quarterbacks in the game because they wanted that quarterback showdown. And we'll see if he can win this one against Jordan Love.
And be thrilled that you're going to Lambeau in October and not January.
Yeah, because it's fall instead of
it's hard. The temperature is supposed to be in the 50s. So not terrible.
Still too chilly for me, but still, you're right.
Look, if you tell me I'm going to Lambeau, I will take 50 all day over -5.
Dude, trust me, I've been to Lambeau when it was. I think it was once you added in like all the wind chill and all that. Yeah, it was negative when I went there. Oh, brutal.
Yeah, not fun.
It was brutal. It would no. I don't even see it. That is definitely something. It is an advantage. That is no question. That's a real home field advantage because psychologically, it's hard not to let the cold affect you. And that's basically the challenge. You're basically playing another opponent, like, and it's yourself. Not try not
Yeah,
to be impacted or influenced by the cold because you're just sitting there shivering, and all you really want to do is just go inside.
yeah, and
And
you,
you
you
gotta
just
fight against that. Like,
you,
no, man, I don't want to go inside.
you
I
just
want
hear
to play
the
football.
you just hear that
Oh,
NFL themes
ooh,
music in your head, the frozen
oh
tundra.
man. Yeah. Oh no, it's real. And some guys they grew up in it.
Yeah,
So I think if you grow up in it, natural advantage. Like you grow up in it. You're like your body is kind of callous to it. You're desensitized to it. It's not a big deal. But if you don't grow up in, you grew up in the South in the heat. Oh, it's something. It takes some getting used to. You really do. It decided like psych yourself up for it all the time. And they got something you can just wear layers and all that kind of stuff. But at some cold, it penetrates layers, man.
that's
That Detroit cold, and even though they got a Chicago cold, the cold coming off them lakes, that Midwest cold, oh man, that's a different type of cold.
that's
It
gonna
is.
be
Ooh,
that's gonna be
I miss
crazy
that.
in the playoffs. If there's
Mm.
any home teams for the college playoffs, if
Oh
there's any
yeah, man.
home teams that
The
are
Big
up
Ten.
north that have to play a
Oh
January football game at home, because we just don't.
man,
There's not January home
you never
football
see
games.
it. Yeah, you never see that.
So
Oh
that'll
man.
be interesting if one of those teams gets it and it's just be like, oh, it's just gonna be miserable for everybody.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a real advantage, man. Especially for young dudes down south who they literally on recruiting visits like, nah, I'm going up there. It's like you can't choose where you get drafted, but in terms of recruits, like, nah, I'm not going up north. No. That's one of the reasons why you got most of your power base of football is down south. It's just the kids down south, a lot of them, I love to see that study. How many kids down south is like, nah, I'm just staying down south. I'm good.
Oh yeah,
I'm just
tons.
gonna stay. I'm just not going to a cold weather place. Yeah, let me get interested to see that study because for me, it definitely. I had Penn State and I had Colorado at schools in my final five that were cold weather places, and I went to Colorado. And Colorado, I mean, yeah, it gets cold. I mean, it gets cold. I think there's a difference. I think I was colder when I was in the Midwest than I was when I was with the Broncos or anytime I've been in Colorado. It's like it's a different kind of cold. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's beautiful in Colorado, so you kind of forget about how cold it is because
We can't
it's
breathe, so you're
it's
worried about other
maybe
things.
that's it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. It did feel, but I'm sure because it gets really cold. But I didn't want to go to cold weather places either. I end up narrowing my choices down to some places where I was going to be warmer. I'd rather be hot than cold. There's no doubt. But I ended up getting drafted by cold weather teams and playing for more cold weather teams. So, which is weird because I didn't want that. Like I really wanted to be down south, and the only down south team I was with was Tampa Bay. Really,
Yeah.
the rest of the place was cold. New York was cold. Detroit was cold. Chicago was cold. Denver was cold. Man. Yeah, I mean, it was just not meant to work out for me. All right, let's get to the rant on the other side. We'll talk about the MVP race and the Heisman race. We'll talk about both of them. I think the narratives starting to become a little bit interesting for the MVP in the NFL and for the Heisman at the college level. I think it's a two-man race for the Heisman at the college level. Maybe there's a dark horse somewhere, but I think it may be a two-man race. We'll talk about that, all of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some college football and a little bit of NFL football. I want to talk about the Heisman race a little bit and the NFL MVP race. First, the Heisman race. I do think it's down to just two guys, honestly. And yet, no, Quinn's not in it anymore. He's done. I think it's down to two guys. I think it's Ashton Jeanty, the running back from Boise State, and I think it's Travis Hunter. I don't really see anybody else in the country, in my opinion, that could really challenge those two. I could be missing somebody, but Cam Ward, I guess, is in that conversation too. I think they have a lead on Cam Ward, but I could be wrong. Maybe Cam Ward, if Cam Ward gets it over those two, to me, then it really does kind of solidify the stereotype of the award. That it's just going to the quarterback of a really good, the best quarterback on the best team that you can get.
Yeah, the best quarterback on their team with the best record.
Basically,
that's my way of saying the ACC is not good.
You can make that argument too. Yeah. So I think that, I guess maybe Cam Ward's in there. So maybe it's three, but in my opinion, Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter should win the award for what Ashton Jeanty is on pace to break Barry Sanders' record.
Yeah.
He's gonna, that's
he's not playing he's not playing full games. Like they're up by 30 and he take him out at halftime.
They're taking him out.
And he still has 200 yards. It's crazy.
It's man. It really is. Like I said, that's a record I don't think anybody would ever be broken. Now, I will say at that time they did not include the bowl games. So Barry Sanders probably, I think he would add another 200 something yards onto his 26. I think it was 2,628 yards that he had. So you'd have added another 220 something yards to that. But with Boise State's record right now, they're potentially in a position to play in the college football playoff. They'll definitely have a postseason game of some sort, whether they're conference championship or, the bowl game or the bowl game. So he's definitely going to break that record because he's on a 12-game pace.
Well, yeah, through 6 games, he has more yards than Barry Sanders through 6 games.
Yeah, so he's going to break the record.
Yeah,
unless something happens. Knock on wood. But to me, that right there, that puts you in, the driver's seat for the Heisman. But then there's Travis Hunter for the Colorado Buffaloes, and they're not gonna. I don't know their record. I don't think they're gonna have a record as good as Boise State.
I think they're only a 1-loss team or 2-loss team.
They're only 1-loss team. Yeah, but I think Boise. I say when it's all said and done, just because they're in a tougher conference and that kind of thing. But hey, you ain't gotta tell me. I said Buffalo. I said the Buffaloes would. I said, man, they're going to compete in the Big 12 just because they got the best quarterback in the Big 12 and they got the best player in the Big 12, and they're the only Big 12 team with 2 first-round picks on the roster.
Yeah. So they dropped that. They dropped to Kansas State last week. So they're a 2-loss team.
Yeah. So they're going to be. I still think they're going to make a bowl game. Some people say they're going to make a bowl game. They're going to make a bowl game.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll win the Big 12, but I said they weren't going to compete in the Big 12. They wouldn't be a pushover, and they're not. But yeah, I think. Because Boise State's still undefeated, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I believe so. Because they don't really play. No, because they lost to
Oregon.
They lost to Oregon. Yeah,
sorry, lost to Oregon. But what did he have against Oregon? 192 yards.
He still ran really well against Oregon.
Yeah, he looked really good against Oregon. So they got 1 loss. So I think they'll end up finishing better. Is my point than Colorado. But Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. So Travis Hunter went on RG3's podcast. And he was asked about the Heisman race and what he thought about Ashton Jeanty and thought about his campaign and who he thought had a better argument for the Heisman. Here's what Travis Hunter, the cornerback / wide receiver for the Colorado Buffaloes, had to say.
Right. And I want you to know that I don't want y'all to shy away from speaking that stuff into existence. I don't think that you can't win it. I definitely think you can win it.
I know I can win it, but
Robert,
I don't know.
Couldn't win it either.
I don't know who was there. I mean, y'all see Ashton Jeanty, but it's not like we haven't seen a running back that's good.
All right.
We haven't seen a player that plays both ways, and I'm gonna keep saying that. It's like he have 95 carries.
Yeah.
For 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
If I had 95 catches, how much yards you think I have?
Okay.
So I'm trying to tell him, like, if I had 95 targets on defense, what you think I'll have?
Right. Oh.
If I had 95 catches on offense, what you think I'll have? So I try to tell you, like, he got double the touches I got on the offensive side of the ball, and I still have defensive stats that's still crazy, and we only in week 6.
Yeah.
So, I'm not gonna argue about it.
I don't consider that art.
He does. It is a decent point about unprecedented things. That's
is.
what you're giving the award for, but that is not what they give the Heisman for. Unfortunately, they don't.
No.
They give it for as we don't even know what the criteria is anymore.
No, yeah, because again, we were already saying it could go to Cam Ward simply in the fact that they don't want to give it to someone who's not a quarterback.
Basically, yes, yeah, and I think Genty honestly, if they give it to Genty or Travis Hunter, I think job well done.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
both of those guys will have earned it. Because I agree with that statement that he said that we haven't seen anything like Travis. I have, and I'm sure way back in the day, maybe there was somebody like this, but they weren't as good as this guy, where he could be a first round pick at either corner or wide receiver. Yeah. That's unbelievable.
No, and
so I don't care what their record is. Some people say if they don't have a decent record, you can't give it to them. I was like, well, man, as long as they make a bowl game and.
But that's the thing is, I think if you're talking about a one-loss Ashton Jeanty, which was a competitive game versus the number 2 team in the country right now, versus or 4 or 5 loss Colorado team. Now, if Colorado's 2-loss team, then they're right there in it too. But if you say they're lower down, then you say, well, your impact on the game was not clearly as much because we don't think Boise State. We think they're a 4 or 5 loss team without him. We think that he is a huge reason why they're winning these games because he just dominates the game in the first half, and then they're fine in the second half to just kind of run the ball out. But yeah, I mean, and then I always laugh at if I had that many touches, you're like, yeah, but there's like 70 guys if they had that many touches would.
Yeah. I don't like that part of his argument.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it is you don't have as many
Yeah, that was flawed argument right there. I like this part about what I'm doing is unprecedented. You've never seen it before.
No, exactly.
That's a good point.
No, and I mean, and that's if he helps drive this Colorado team to a 2-loss team, if they don't lose again this season, then he's 100% in that conversation because that Boise State, people look at that and they don't have a tough schedule. Now, when people say he shouldn't be in the conversation, Ashton Jeanty shouldn't because he doesn't have a tough schedule. You're always like, do you know how many teams? So we'll say 90% of teams don't have a really tough schedule. 80% of teams don't have a tough schedule in FBS 1A. And no one has done this since Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you.
The odds of amount of people who could do this, it's not like, oh, well, they're just playing better. They're playing at better schools, but anyone could do what he does. No one could. It's if you go watch him play,
stand up.
No, stand up. He's an electric player. Would we love to see him in a different uniform playing, in big matchups like the ones this weekend? Yes, of course you would love to see that. However, you'll see him on Sundays and see how that works out as well. Because the way he's been playing, he's playing on Sundays now. It's guaranteed.
I just don't. I know with the running back position being devalued to what it is, what does that do for Genty's value? Is he considered? I always say there's like there are the exceptions. Like there are some guys that are they're freak exceptions. It doesn't matter. Bijan was considered that.
Yeah.
So now we don't care about the value of that position. He's so damn good. It can justify drafting him this high, even though the position has been devalued. Jahmyr Gibbs, I guess, was also drafted in the first round. Genty's going to be that guy. But I just wonder how high. He's definitely going to be a first. I mean, I think we should draft him.
I think he's first round. But the one as far as draft, I haven't watched enough of his pass pro. I haven't watched enough of his catching the ball. Because if he is I can only run the ball back, even if he's great at it, it will diminish him a little bit in people's odds where they'll say, well, we get that, but we're not going to win games with just you running the ball. So we're going to have to throw the ball so you have to be okay in pass pro or going out for a pass. But I still think, even if he's terrible at those two things, he's still a high second round pick. It's just he may not go first round because people don't want to draft running backs in the first round.
Yeah, I know. That's why I wonder. It's just it's rare anyway, but I think he's one of those rare exceptions to the rule. There's no question. All right, we didn't get to our MVP conversation. I'll just throw this out there. Is it possible? Because I went and looked at this is NFL MVP Watch for on ESPN. They're in their own MVP Watch, and they have the latest odds for MVP. And man, one of the leaders here, they got Lamar Jackson at plus 550. They got Patrick Mahomes at plus 325. They got Patrick Mahomes. He's still still. I mean, look. Okay, just real quick, and then we'll go to break. And because I want to get to the MVP stuff, but I was just giving you some of the odds they have. But he is still one of the leaders in MVP odds. Although he is on pace for career lows in touchdown passes, QBR, and career high in interceptions. He ranks 16th in QBR, tied for second with 6 interceptions, and sits at 11th in passing yards per game. And everybody's like, yeah, but he's the best quarterback in the league.
He's gonna turn it on. He's gonna turn it on, and then it'll be over.
Turn it on. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, you're right. But I don't think he is going to turn it on. I think he's going to be like this till they get to the playoffs, and then the playoffs he's going to turn it on.
Yeah.
But you win the award based on the regular season.
I feel like
I don't think he's going to turn it on.
I don't know. I guess
season.
there's just a lot of people that put money on it, so they don't want to lower that line. But it feels like if I was Vegas, I'd be wanting people to put money on Patrick Mahomes at this point.
Yeah,
because he's not going to win it.
The truth is, Lamar Jackson is playing at a really high level.
He is.
Is it possible? Has anybody ever won? Any team ever have the winners of MVP and Offensive Player of the Year on the same team? Because Derrick Henry is definitely has the best case right now for Offensive Player of the Year with what he's doing. Because he's leading them in rushing right now, and that's Nico probably was in that conversation until the injury.
Yeah.
Right now, I think Derrick Henry's probably the front runner for it, and right now, I'm telling you, Lamar Jackson's probably top 3. Any MVP odds right now. He's having a better season right now as a passer than he did last season when he won the MVP.
It's crazy.
And he's got the leading rusher in the backfield with him. He's also top 10 in rushing. He's number 8 in rushing right now.
Yeah. No, he's having an insane season.
He's 3rd and 6th in passer rating and QBR. Unbelievable. Like I said, what are you going to do if Lamar Jackson is your front runner for MVP? They said you going to give him another one back-to-back? Is that possible?
He's 3rd?
He's 3rd?
How old is Lamar Jackson? He's like 26, something like that.
That would be unbelievable. And he still can't beat Patrick Mahomes, who's having his worst year.
27.
He's going to meet up with Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. How old is he?
27.
Wow. And he's going to meet up with Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs and having a back-to-back MVP winning season and lose to Patrick Mahomes having his worst season. It's gotta sting. All right, we'll come back. We'll get what the facts, what the stats here on the other side, right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis, a lifetime low and Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right. I got a couple of Cowboy stats, and I don't like them very much. Cowboys fans, I don't like them either. How about this one? About the Dallas Cowboys, and comes from our friends over at Fantasy Points Data. Says that Dak has had some accuracy issues this year. In 2024, his off-target throw rate is fifth worst in the NFL, 20.1%. His turnover-worthy throw rate is second worst. It says here 4.9%. In 2023, he was top five in off-target rate throw. Off-target throw rate, excuse me, and he was 11th in turnover throw rate. So Dak's a little bit off, but I think it's because he doesn't have enough weapons with guys that can separate and create separation for him. Also, Cowboys are not helping him out. Remember, we told you that they were at least a couple of weeks ago 30th in at the snap motion, and they were in the 20s. I think like 22nd in pre-snap motion, which are obvious cheat codes in the NFL. If you look at play action pass, the Cowboys went from top five to bottom five in terms of their play action pass rate from 2023 to 2024, at least so far. And on play action, Dak, he's just better. Well, most quarterbacks are. Honestly, the truth is, it improves all your metrics. It's just another cheat code, but he's nearly 2 yards better. Looking at yards per attempt, 2 more yards. He averages nearly 2 yards more per average on yards per attempt, and 38% more. If you go look at it, he has no turnover-worthy throws, by the way, on play action this season, and 38% more fantasy points per drop back as well. So Dak is better with play action. Cowboys use it more. They also need to use more pre-snap motion, but that's a different conversation for a different day. If we're looking at ASS, I'm gonna tell you guys I'm obsessed with ASS. Not get your mind out of the gutter. We're talking about average separation score in the NFL. Talking about receivers. AD Mitchell is still right now leading all rookies in ASS through week 6. And according to their score and win rate, he is also the top receiver win rate. But when you look at lowest percentage of catchable targets, he's at the top of the list of lowest percentage of catchable targets. He has only 35% of his targets have been catchable targets. And we talked that some of that's on him. Even he admitted, he's got to work on his route running and being a little bit more precise. And, the quarterbacks just haven't been able to find him. And I guess after Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco had trouble finding AD Mitchell, then maybe he decided, it's got to be more on me, kind of a man in the mirror moment for him. So good for him. Also, speaking of wide receivers from Texas, Jordan Whittington, apparently he has been one of the best separators in the NFL when facing man coverage. You go look at his win rates and his separation score versus man coverage. He actually has been one of the best in the league, along with AD Mitchell. And with Cooper Kupp, I think potentially coming back in the next 2 weeks for them, I wonder how much Jordan Whittington's going to stay in the fold, because he's been great while they've had all the injuries at wide receiver to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. So they're not going to, I don't know exactly how much his role is going to decrease, but they like Jordan Whittington. He's going to play, and good for him. He's been playing really well for a rookie, and thank God he's staying healthy. That's the irony of it. He's getting his shot because nobody else can stay healthy in that wide receiver room, yet he is staying healthy and yet couldn't do it at all in his college career. I'm so happy for Jay Witt, man. It's a great story. All right, I think that's enough topics right now. Sorry, enough stats to jump into. We'll come in next segment and throw out some other topics. We'll talk about, of course, Texas, Georgia. We'll continue to preview that matchup. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain as well. We'll also get into a little preview of the Texans and the Green Bay game. We'll get back to that. Also, I want to talk about the line that has shifted a little bit in Texas' favor for this Texas-Georgia game. What does that mean? And we'll talk about that Texas defense, number one defense in the country, how they match up against the Georgia offense, and what they need to be on the lookout for when it comes to that Georgia offense. We'll do that and more, all of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Mm-hmm. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday right here on the Rodcast, courtesy of my co-host, the Idealionaire Patrick Davis, who comes up with all the musically themed days of the week. And on New Theme Thursdays, comes up with a new creative theme, and he's inspired by, of course, the big matchup this weekend, biggest matchup in college football, top 5 matchup between the Longhorns and the Georgia Bulldogs. They're going to be coming to Austin, and of course, inspired by that, he has decided to play songs from artists born in Georgia singing about things and cities and the state of Georgia.
Yes.
Potentially.
Yeah,
yes.
singing about Georgia.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And who's this? Who's this?
It's Alan Jackson doing Chattahoochee, the Chattahoochee River there in Georgia.
I remember the song I recognized. I just wasn't sure who sang the song. But yeah, it is a very recognizable tune. I've heard that. Actually, I've seen it in like movies, I believe, too.
You get it. It has the line that everybody knows, which is the Chattahoochee hotter than a hoochie coochie, which is just a ridiculous line, but it's hilarious.
Hey man, the hoochie coochie. That's been you've been talking about hoochie coochies for a while. Isn't there like a hoochie coochie man?
Yeah,
that's the song.
Yeah, exactly.
Back in the day. So hoochie coochie, man. Back in the day, I guess I was like, I don't even know how sure what hoochie coochie means, but I got an idea, and I don't even know if my idea is right that I have in my head about hoochie coochie. All right, thank you, Patrick, for that. Also, we appreciate Patrick coming up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. That is already posted at X, on X, I should say, at the Horn ATX. Go check it out and go vote on that. What is the topic, Patrick, for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll of the day. How many points will Texas score against Georgia? We gave you 4 options: 0 to 14, 15 to 24, 25 to 34, and 35 plus. 25 to 34 is that sweet spot with 67% of the vote. Then we get 35 plus for 18%, 12%, 15 to 24, and then 4%, 0 to 14.
Man, they'll score 35 plus. And they're a top 20 scoring defense. Let's throw it out there. They're a better scoring defense than Oklahoma, and a lot of that is skewed because Texas playing Oklahoma. But this is the best scoring defense that you faced. But it's not the Georgia defense of old, and they just don't have a signature, unique identity defensively. But it's a Kirby Smart defense, which means it's sound. They're a defense that can stop the run. They start there. I think they are pretty stout against the run. I think that for Texas is maybe a challenge in this game. And your hope is that, Quinn gets in a groove early, gets in a rhythm early, and then the passing game opens up the run game. I don't know if he'll just be able to line up and run it right at Georgia. We talked about that. But Kentucky did, and Auburn has success running the football. They ran a lot of the problem is they ran a lot of inside runs. Kentucky ran a lot of inside zone reads. They ran duo dives, double teams at the point of attack. So a lot of interior runs, and Texas has those, of course. Texas is a really diverse running game, but the truth is Trey Wisner, he's your best runner running like zone concepts because of his patience and his vision, but outside zone, wide zone, which is also the bread and butter of Texas. Those are the 2 runs that you popped for long runs, the 1 touchdown and then the fumble recovery for a touchdown versus Oklahoma. Those were the split wide zone. You don't really have a runner because of CJ Baxter being out that can run your inside zone just as effectively. And so against a team like Georgia, not having the ability to run the inside zone, and not having the ability to run a lot of inside interior runs, that may hurt you because Georgia could have a plan, as we said yesterday, for the split wide zone. Why wouldn't they? It's Texas's most popular play. It's their most, in terms of the running game, it's their most deployed run concept. So he may have a plan for that. And if he does, then you got to be able to counter and switch it up and be able to troubleshoot and find other run concepts that are going to work versus Georgia. There's something that'll work for us. I mean, Kentucky found it. Auburn found it. You can run against them. For Texas, though, it just may not come in the run concepts that they specialize in all the time. And that's why I think for the Trey Wisner thing is interesting, because he is just right now more compatible with some of Texas's better run, the most popular run concepts. So yeah, and then Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp. Yeah, thank you, man. Quan Costin wants to remind me of Muschamp's on that staff too. Yes, no doubt. Yeah, no, they got some brilliant defensive minds, and trust me, they gonna have a plan for Texas. They'll have a plan for everything Texas specializes in, which is why tendency breakers are so important. They'll have a plan for the RPO. We talked about that. They'll have a plan for the wide zone. All right. They'll have a plan to deal with the pre-snap motions and shifts that Sark is so innovative with. They'll have a plan for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
what's the tendency breaker for Sark?
And we know that they're going to be focused a lot on empty too.
They should. Yeah.
Because
I've been knowing that all week long.
Screwed it up some.
They have. And Alabama broke it out against them and whipped them with a lot of empty. And like I said, talked about that for most of the entire weekend. If we don't see that versus Georgia, I'd be very disappointed if Sark can break out a lot of empty, maybe like 10 snaps of it or more, and potentially, because Quinn was really good in it too. So no, I agree with you. They'll have a plan for that too. But you should be able as a coach to anticipate what their plan is going to be. And that's what Sark, that's the chess match. Anticipating what their plan, what's going to be their plan. Well, are they going to blitz when you're going empty? They're just going to say blitz and we would play man coverage behind it. If that's the case, what's your solution? All right. Are they going to drop 8 and just rush 3 against empty? If that's the case, okay. Then what's your solution in those situations? That's what I want to see from Sark. Like I said, we know Kirby's going to have a plan of attack and a game plan for, like I said, all the tendencies and conceptual signatures that Sark has on offense. Then how does Sark break the tendency and use that information against them? That's the brilliance of Sark as a play caller and a play designer. So I can't wait for that. That chess match to me is going to be awesome. I really can't wait for it. And then the adjustments throughout the game, the script for Sark, 40 play script, that kind of thing. So I think it's going to be really good. I don't think we'll be disappointed as Longhorn fans. Well, we will if they lose. But in terms of the product on the field, I think you're going to get a really, really good game. And it'll be one of the most historic games in Texas football history. I'm hearing from CJ Vogel and my man Jerry Hamilton over there on Texas football. They talking about the recruiting list is now of recruits that may be coming from the 2025 and the 26, and God knows what other classes. 70 something plus recruits going to be on campus.
Jeez.
70? That's crazy. I don't even know. I don't know how you keep. I guess they can get tickets. I mean, they're Texas. They can do whatever they want to. Like, what do you do about the capacity? Just keep adding. Do they just have automatic seats? Do they have that many just open seats?
I'm sure you have like standing room areas you can put them in.
I guess they can put them in they can put them in like the clubs.
Yeah,
and stuff like that, and just give them like club access and let them hang out in the club. Like, I have no idea like how it works. It's like I said, when I heard the number, I was like, there's no way Texas had a recruiting weekend where they've had that many recruits.
No, and that's when, and the two, they're like, I'm going to Texas for a recruit, and then your cousin calls and it's like, hey man, you got an extra one?
Right? No, you're right. And they probably they bring in the crew.
Mom and dad.
Everybody wants to go to the game. Yeah,
and everybody wants to come into town, and
I don't know how that works. That's wild. Yeah, because you don't say no to a big time recruit. They call you now. They've got to get some 5-star D line that's like, hey, I want to go to the game. Can I go? Yeah, of course. What do you mean? Of course. Yeah. We weren't even recruiting you, but yes, you can come to the game and you can, we will host you. You know what I mean? Like that's wild. And they're not official visits. These are most of these are largely unofficial visits, but they're still Texas. That's your in, right? With some of these, you want to go big game hunting with some of these biggest recruits around the country. This is your chance to go big game hunting. All you got to do, it's like rolling up downtown in a Lamborghini and all the ladies seeing you. I don't really have to spit much game at that point. I just got to be seen walking out of the Lamborghini, and it'll do all the talking for me for the ladies. And for Texas right now, this is their Lamborghini game.
Yeah.
All right. This is it. They can call any recruit in the country and go, hey, you want to come to the game? Like, yes, I want to go. You're committed to, Georgia. You're committed to Ohio State. Yeah, I don't care. I want to go to the game. I don't care if I'm committed to them. I want to go to this game. All right.
Yeah. I want to see all the hosted by Texas.
So that's why they can get an in with any recruit in the country right now. So they're just going big game hunting. They're just like, hey, you need an in. This is the in. You want to come to this game? And every recruit's like, yeah, I want to go to the game.
Yeah.
So it's going to be huge. It's biggest recruiting weekend in Texas football history. So winning would help. You got to have a good product regardless, and Texas will be competitive. We haven't seen a game with Texas.
No, you don't want to have that thing where I don't know if Texas done it to other people, but when Georgia walks over to your recruits, and it's hey man, we still the guys.
Yeah. Yo, Texas did it to Alabama.
That's what I'm saying. Texas did it to Alabama. That's what I'm saying. Texas has done it to other teams. So
Texas did it I remember
you
that.
You want to be able to win the game and be like, no. We're still the guys. This is the place.
Yeah. And I've talked about that Atlanta area too, the Atlanta metro area. No metro area in the country producing NFL players at the rate that Atlanta metro area is. And Texas wants to recruit that area. That's why they got Kenny Baker, who's got ties there, and so it's to show a choice. And if you want to walk into those living rooms of teenagers in the Atlanta area and go, yeah, we're better football program than Georgia, right? We're better. You want to come play for the best football program in the SEC? That's us. That's Texas. And it's hard to make that sell right now because you hadn't beaten Georgia.
Yeah.
But you beat them. You can make that sell. And you got to play them next year. So a good chance you could beat them again in 2 years and then start making that pitch and turn at least start to get your market share of the most fertile recruiting metro area in the country right now for the last 5 years. All right, so big game. Everybody's excited about it, of course. We've been digging into it from every possible angle. We'll continue to do that. We'll go behind the burn-ons curtain next segment. But coming back, we'll get into the availability report, what that means for this Texas-Georgia matchup, and the line moving from 3.5 to now 5. At one point, it was at 5.5. What could be the reason that Vegas decided to shift that line, the public move that line? And we'll talk about it and discuss it. But first, let's get to the Horn headlines. Let's get educated. Let's get updated. Let's get informed on all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB playoffs, the Dodgers got an 8-0 win over the Mets last night to take a 2-1 series lead in the NLCS. Walker Buehler pitched 4 innings, only allowing 3 hits and striking out 6, and the Dodgers bullpen was excellent the rest of the way, en route to getting a shutout victory. Today, both series continue, with the Guardians needing to get a win at home to get back into their series with the Yankees. And in the NFL, the Broncos will take on the Saints on Thursday Night Football, with Sean Payton making his return to New Orleans for the first time since coming back to coaching. The Saints will be trying to get back in the winning column after losing the last 4 games without their starting quarterback, Derek Carr, who is listed as doubtful for the game. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Appreciate those. All right, let's get to this Texas-Georgia line, and we'll get to the availability report as well. But according to multiple sites, the Texas-Georgia line shifted yesterday or in the last 24 hours from about 3 at one point, and based on this report from Vegas Insiders, it actually went to 5.5 at one point yesterday, and then dropped back down to 5. So at most lines, at least last time I looked at it, it was a 5-point line for 5-point Texas favorite, actually, by 5 against Georgia. And yeah, I'm not sure what shifted. The availability report came out yesterday, so maybe it was the availability report. We did learn that Smell Munden, the third-year starting linebacker for the Georgia Bulldogs, he was not going to be available. We learned that. We also learned that they may or may not have 2 of their offensive linemen available who have been out for the last couple of weeks. Tate Ratledge has been out most of the season with an early season injury. He's questionable, the offensive guard. Jared Wilson's a center for them, and he's probable, it says here on the injury report for Georgia. That's important because they are, if you go look at their interior runs, and I threw this stat out there earlier, if you go look at the interior runs for Georgia, it's been a problem for them so far this season, especially through those A gaps and the B gaps on that right side. Right, your A gap is obviously right there by the center. The B gap on the opposite side of the guard there, those runs, those interior runs, have been an issue with the injuries to Jared Wilson and to Tate Radledge. The last 2 weeks, they've averaged less than a yard. Matter of fact, they averaged 0.7 yards before contact in the center and the right guard gaps, basically, those interior runs. Their average in 2023 was 2.6 yards on such runs. And currently, they're 83rd in running back yards per attempt between the tackles. So your interior runs, they're 83rd in yards per attempt between the tackles. Last week at Mississippi State, they were at 4 yards per attempt in between the tackles. So they're struggling a little bit with the interior runs because of injuries. If they get one or both of those guys back, that number will improve. But right now for Texas, that is something you might want to attack, something you might want to expose. If you can penetrate, and especially in the run game, start making some plays, obviously making some plays in the backfield, penetrating, and getting some tackles for a loss, some negative plays, get them behind the chains, get them to basically get frustrated with their running game and force them to sort of leaning on Carson Beck to throw the football a little bit more. Maybe you can pin your ears back and get after Carson Beck. We'll talk about that. I mean, Carson Beck that's a challenge in itself. That's the best quarterback Texas will face all year, best quarterback they've got on the schedule, and he is so far, been playing at a really, really high level, especially the last 10 quarters. But take the second half of that Bama game. Since then, he's been playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Something clicked then in that second half of the Bama game. I'll give you some of the numbers, but he's been a different quarterback since then. That will be the test for Texas, to try to make him look mediocre when right now he's playing some of the best football we've seen him play. So to me, for Texas injury report, the Isaiah Bond status right now on the injury report. They have him as questionable. Sark said he practiced yesterday and he looked good. So I'm assuming if he practiced yesterday and looked good, that maybe he'll play. I don't know if he's 70, 80%, does he have that world-class speed available with the ankle injury? But that is the only player on the injury report that for Texas could be available. They have some other guys, but they're all out. Derek Williams Jr., CJ Baxter, Christian Clark, Velton Gardner, Trevor Gooseby, all out. I'm not sure what the Trevor Gooseby injury is. That kind of came out of nowhere. The rest of them, not surprising. They've been on the injury report for a while. But Trevor Gooseby, I'm not sure what that is. He's a backup tackle for him. So they have depth on their line, but that one, there was no talk of it during the week. So I'm not sure exactly what the reason is for the Trevor Gooseby injury, him being out. But Smell Munden is big for the Georgia Bulldogs, and so is Tate Radledge and Jared Wilson. Those are the ones to watch. But Munden is out. So that's a place where Sark needs to attack too, that linebacker position, especially with Gunnar Helm playing at a really high level. That and the running backs, Sark likes to involve the running backs a lot in the passing game. You can really test the eye discipline of those linebackers with all the misdirection and the pre-snap motion. And I think you can challenge them a lot too, because you got a tight end that's playing at a really high level right now. And he was a really good linebacker in coverage. He was a great coverage linebacker. Now, I don't know the guy behind him, if he's a really good coverage linebacker, but I guarantee Sark's going to test it as with Gunnar Helm, and he should.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's kind of where both these teams, it feels like it's going to be about big plays, right? And who can break them. And that's when you talk about that run game and the offensive line for Georgia. They're going to still get you enough yardage in that run game to move the ball. The question is, can you knock them off course on an incomplete pass to Carson Beck and, not let them just run the ball over the top of you over and over? So can you get those little stops, and can you not allow the big one? And how long will Kirby Smart be patient and just say, no, let's just keep running the ball. Let's just keep, be patient on offense, and our defense will keep us in this game. And if you're Sark, how long are you going to be patient to go and pick your shots against a Kirby Smart defense that is going to have, not try and allow any big plays over the top of themselves as well? It's going to be interesting to see throughout this beginning the game who starts to take shots first. Is it going to be Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers who feels the need to really try and take a big punch? And it feels like Carson Beck could be that guy just because they know we if we can get a lead on Texas, no one has really done that to put a lead and put Texas behind the chains and put them behind on a scoreboard and make them do it. I know OU scored first, but that wasn't quite the same thing. That was off, it's off of turnovers and it's off of bad field position. But to get a 7 or 2 score lead on Texas, then see how they react to that. You maybe see them try and take some shots early against Texas, knowing that their run game hasn't been electric and getting those big plays.
Yeah. No, right now, Georgia is, I think, 92nd in rushing yards per game. I think they're around 60. Maybe it's like 65th or somewhere in the 60s, I believe, in yards per carry. They're not, I agree with you, they're not a prolific rushing team, and they've been getting big plays in the passing game. I'll go over that again when we go behind the burnt orange curtain. But there's nothing wrong with being overly reliant on your first round quarterback. I was advocating Texas do the same thing with Quinn when Quinn was playing well. Like, hey, put the offense in Quinn's hands, run it through Quinn, and it was working really well until he hit the slow start versus Oklahoma. And I think Sark made the right move by pivoting more to the run game. So I think you're right about the quarterbacks. A lot of that will depend on how does Quinn start, and Quinn's not, unless Sark really breaks tendency, and he might, where he wants to take shots downfield with Quinn. In some vertical shots downfield, Texas is going to start off getting him in rhythmic throws, short, quick, in intermediate throws to get him in a groove and get him confident, and force Oklahoma to have to flood those short intermediate zones, and then maybe catch them over the top in the passing game. That's been what Sark has done lately in the passing game, instead of starting off with the in attack mode, taking shots with Quinn. He doesn't do that as much anymore. He was doing that a couple of years ago. Doesn't do that as much anymore. So we'll see. Maybe that's the way he breaks tendency. But I agree with you. If I'm Georgia, I come out taking shots.
Yeah.
Because Texas defense has not faced a quarterback like Carson Beck, and they haven't proven yet, even though they've been playing like the best quarterback and so like the best secondary in the country, they haven't necessarily been tested with an offense that can throw the ball vertically. I mean, Michigan, ULM, and Oklahoma, all among the bottom 5 worst teams in college football and in passing plays of 20 plus yards. They're vertically challenged. This is not a Georgia team that's vertically challenged.
No,
they can throw the football downfield, they're going to test that Texas.
Yeah, because I don't think that because there's 2 ways they could go at this game, which is our defense is good enough to hold them, and we'll just kind of try and march our way down the field. And we know that Texas is not going to be able to stop us if we run the ball for 4 or 5 yards of carry. We might be able to get down, and we'll be able to get in field position. We think we can get the ball in the end zone, but we'll play it much more conservative, and we'll trust our defense. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to understand the challenge and come out and try and push themselves early. And, how do you get Texas off they haven't been punched in the face yet. And so you say this entire season, they haven't really been punched in the face. So if you're able to get 7 on the board early, if you're able to get a 2-score lead early in these games, then that's the first punch in the face Texas will get. And if you're Georgia, you have to feel like that's your best shot to go after somebody, to say they don't know. They haven't had someone that can throw the ball downfield on them. Throw it downfield early and often and try and get on them. And maybe it'll bite us in the butt, because if we get a few incompletions, we got to punt right away. But at the same part, we can do this first 2 or 3 series and not get too far behind, because we believe in our defense.
Yeah, I think for Georgia, it's something that they need to figure out early in the game for the strategy purposes. Right? Do you have that available to you? And I think you'll take shots all throughout the game, but in terms of how frequent, and we'll get into this, and when we go behind the burnt orange curtain, I think they'll troubleshoot it early, and see. It only makes sense. And you may get like first play of the game kind of thing. You may get like deep play action and just decide let's test them early, because they have a defense that'll keep them in the game. It's a top 20 scoring defense. Now, Texas may have an amazing game plan, and Texas may score in their first 3 drives of the game and pull out and pull out to a big lead on Georgia. But then we still know the game ain't over. And then you definitely know they're going to be throwing it and chunking it deep, just like they did against Bama. Then it's like, all right, you better be ready for it because they chunking it deep. That's the only chance they got to get back in the game. So either way, I think we see it. That's
I do too.
Kind of where I am on it.
But I'm with you. I think that when you list out all the things that their strengths and their weaknesses, I think they feel our strength is our defense and our strength is our quarterback. And we're going to rely on those two things to try and go win. And that's what I feel like Georgia's going to come out and do. So for Texas, it's, if they're running the ball early, don't overcommit to it.
Don't fall for the rope-a-dope.
Yes. Well, they're gonna. They saw that Mississippi State game plan, and they're gonna run the football on us.
Mm-hmm.
And don't buy into that, and start moving those, and having those safeties start to creep up a little bit more and a little bit more. And the safeties watching the running backs, not the quarterbacks, and all of a sudden that ball they're running, they're chasing.
Yep, and they got some double moves. Sark even said it. They like the double moves. To kind of catch you off guard, catch you sleeping in the back end, eyes in the wrong place. So it's just going to be a challenge for the Texas DBs they haven't seen. And they got wide. We'll go over those. We haven't talked about the wideouts, but they got some guys on the outside too that you need to worry about. And who's got they're twitchiness. And Texas had to deal with a lot of twitchiness on the outside. Right? There wasn't a lot of Michigan didn't have a lot of twitchiness. Oklahoma's top 5 wide receivers were out. So they weren't that twitchy. When you got twitchy athletes on the outside, man, it can be a problem. Trust me, I have to deal with those guys. So we'll talk about that. We'll introduce you to the skill positions for Georgia, but also talk about that vertical passing game a little bit and why it's, in my opinion, one of the X factors that Texas has to make sure that they're on top of, that they have to be able to neutralize that vertical threat from Carson Beck. We'll get into that. We'll also talk more about the Texas defense and what the Texas defensive strategy is going to be going up against Carson Beck in terms of how you create pressure, because he's good versus the blitz, like really good versus the blitz. His numbers are fantastic. We'll give them to you on the other side, but they would, they would indicate that you don't want to blitz him a lot, and when you do, you want to be very judicious about it. So how do you create the pressure when you're going up against a quarterback that is really efficient versus blitz packages? We'll talk. That's the case. All that and more when we return right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some Texas football conversation. All right, let's talk about Texas Georgia here. Let's talk about the matchup between the Texas defense and Carson Beck. Really, the Georgia offense. I think it's just it's so Carson Beck centric now, though. I mean, he is the elite element of their offense. They do have guys on the outside who I think are more than capable weapons for Georgia, but ultimately, if you're looking at what you need to game plan against, you need to game plan against Carson Beck and really what he does in the pocket that makes him so unique and makes him such a formidable threat and makes him a potential first round draft pick. He maneuvers in the pocket really well, so he can buy himself time in the pocket. So that's how he handles pressure. I was talking about him versus the blitz. When you try to get pressure on him, you want to make sure it's organic pressure because against the blitz, he's fantastic. Here are his numbers versus the blitz. When he's blitzed, his completion percentage is 70%. His yards per attempt, 7.4 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 1 reception under pressure so far this year. When he's being blitzed, I should say. His turnover worthy plays, he's at 1 turnover worthy play when he's been blitzed so far this year. 1.4%. His ADOT 7.7. I mean, he got 1 sack, I think, when he's been blitzed so far this year. He's only been sacked 6 times because he does a great job getting rid of the football. He's aware. His time to throw when he's blitzed, 2.3 seconds because ball's out. Once he identifies it pre-snap, ball's out. So it's just last week when you played Michael Hawkins Jr., you had your highest blitz rate of the season. You pressured him on 21 of those 40 dropbacks that they end up having. So I think that was your tendency breaker. And with a young quarterback, it makes sense. You want to overload their process, right? And speed them up, give them more than they can handle. You did that with him. I don't know if that's going to work with Carson Beck. You want to find a way to create organic pressure. So one of the things I do think will translate from that Oklahoma game is the way you use Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons, moving those guys around the formation. There was one formation where you had both Anthony Hill and you had Colin Simmons on the edge with LaFau playing that inside middle linebacker position. There was another down where you had Colin Simmons as the middle linebacker and him blitzing, essentially rushing through one of the interior gaps, which I thought was pretty creative. So, and 2 weeks ago versus Mississippi State, they had the exotic look where they put the D tackles, have 3 down linemen. The D tackles are playing the wide techniques on the edge, and you put your edge rushers, Trey Moore or one of your linebackers, Anthony Hill or Colin Simmons. They're lined up mugging the B gap, and they either drop or they rush or they end up dropping back in coverage. Either they're just there to confuse blocking schemes and to create matchup advantages for the Texas pass rushers. And that's what you need to do in this game. So I don't know if you want to blitz, it should be very situation specific. And I don't think the blitz rate should be real high. And by the way, PK and Jane Anson, they don't normally blitz a lot anyway. Last week, I think they were doing that to break tendency against a very young quarterback. This week, I think you see them dial it back to their blitz rates, their average blitz rates, which we've seen all season, which are pretty low. But I think you'll see some really exotic ways and seeing some of the things we've already that have been documented, like I just mentioned, but some more exotic ways to weaponize Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill as pass rushers in this game. That's going to be important. You don't have to, and the beauty of it is you don't have to worry about a spy. You have to worry about that the first 2 games of SEC play. Michael Hawkins Jr., you had double spies, right, in that game. Sometimes it was Anthony Hill and Simmons, sometimes it was LaFau and Hill, sometimes it was Benda and Hill. Like, he mixed it up with the spies. And there was times in the Mississippi State game where Texas probably needed more of a spy. I think they gave up a rushing touchdown to quarterback, but they're in that game you had to worry about, or at least allocate resources for a quarterback that can move around, a +1 in the running game. You don't have to worry about that with Carson Beck. So you should be able to get a little bit more exotic and creative with some of your pressure packages involving Anthony Hill and involving Colin Simmons. So that's number 1. How you're going to pressure them, it should be organic. If you're going to blitz, make sure it's 3rd and long. I would say if you're gonna blitz, because if it's third and long, he throws it short and quick. He gets rid of the football on hot routes. I mean, that's basically what the data tells me. Time to throw 2.3 seconds, so you can speed him up. His, if you go look at his average depth of target, it's 7.7, so it's quick and out. And if you go look at his yards per attempt, he's 7.4 when he's being blitzed. So if you're in third and long, there's third and 9, third and 10, then you can make the argument, yeah, let's blitz him, let's speed it up, because he's not going to hold on to the ball. He's going to get rid of it. And if we can get rid of it short, make the tackle, boom, punt, we live to fight another day. Texas has a 87% stop rate, which means 87% of the drives that Texas defends ends up in a punt, ends up in a turnover, or a turnover on downs. That is the best number in the country. And that's what you're hoping against Georgia. You can, have that same kind of high stop rate. But here's why it's going to be tough. Because Carson Beck, one thing that I think he is really, really, almost kind of me elite in, but he's really comfortable and he's confident in throwing the ball deep down the field. I was looking at his numbers on passes 20 yards or more down the field, and I went and looked at these passes actually on film, and when watched these specific throws on passes 20 yards or more down the field. He has 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. On passes thrown to the intermediate area of the field, he's got 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And to the short area of the field, that's 0 to 10 yards. Intermediate is 10 to 20 yards. Deep is anything over 20 yards. He's got 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So he's got more touchdowns throwing to the deepest area of the field than he does throwing to the shortest or the intermediate area of the field. He's got fewer interceptions, only 1, throwing deep, than he's got throwing to the intermediate or throwing to the short area of the field. He's got 2 interceptions in the short area of the field and 2 interceptions throwing the intermediate area of the field. Now, he's got 41 deep balls on the season. He's completed around close to 37% of them. But Texas has only defended 16. Hell, Oklahoma threw it deep once on you. Mississippi State threw it deep 5 times, and they completed 1 of those. Michigan threw it deep 5 times, but then I think ULM was once. They threw it deep 1 time on you downfield, 20 yards or more. So you haven't had a team throw it deep more than 5 times. They average around 7 deep passes a game. Carson Beck does. They're close to averaging around 7 deep passes a game. They're going to throw it deep. And if you look at the big plays, passing plays, so passing plays of 20 plus yards, I was a little surprised by this too. Georgia's top 3 in the country. Georgia's on 20 plus yard passing plays. They're number 3 behind Ole Miss and Miami. On 30 plus yard passing plays, they're number 3 behind Ole Miss and Coastal Carolina. And for Texas, yes, your defense is, I think it's an elite defense. I've been using that term for it. I think they've earned that right as the number 1 total defense and number 1 scoring defense, right, in college football. But the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams house, Cardi B house, Megan Thee Stallion's house, but is Michigan, Oklahoma, and ULM all in the bottom 5 in the country. 134th, 133rd, and 129th in the country in 20 plus yard pass plays generated offensively. Those offenses are among the worst passing offenses in the country. Now, part of that is because you played Texas, but it wasn't just Texas. Turns out, no matter who they played, they were terrible at throwing the football. And Michigan's, I think, run rate right now is like 56%, which is one of the top run rates in the country. That's just who they are. That's their identity. So my point being, 2 things can be true. Texas defense is elite, and they have improved tremendously in pass defense, and now is considered the best, if not one of the best, if not the best pass defense in the country. You can make that argument. Second in pass efficiency defense, second in pass defense. I believe they lead the country in explosive plays allowed, explosive play rate allowed, and they lead the country in yards per attempt allowed. So yes, exponential improvement. Went from being one of the worst coverage secondaries to being one of the best in the country, but they also have not been thoroughly tested. And that will happen in this game with Carson Beck and with the Georgia passing game, because he likes to throw it deep. So you'll get tested with passes that travel 20 yards or more in the air, your air yard throws, your deep air yard throws, and you'll be tested with guys who can just make guys miss and be in twitchy, dynamic athletes who can catch and run and take advantage and maximize yak opportunities. You'll have those guys too. And that's why I gave this ad about them being third in the country in generating 20-plus yard pass plays, 30-plus yard pass plays. Those are not all Carson Beck, completing deep passes down the field. Some of them are. Some of them are just these guys catching and running. So they have those type of athletes on the outside. So to me, that is the game in a nutshell. How, or at least in this matchup, how does Texas defend the deep ball? How do they pressure Carson Beck? They answer those two, they win the game. And that not just win it. I think they'll win it comfortably, whatever that means. I think they can control the game if they could consistently do those things, defend the deep ball, and also be able to put pressure on Carson Beck. But that is not an easy thing to do. Like I said, he's great at maneuvering in the pocket, being able to create time and create space for himself. And he's really good when it comes to manipulating defenders with his eyes and getting a safety to move one way, coming back somewhere else. And his wide receivers fight for him. They make contested catches. They go up and fight for the football, which is also something Texas hasn't really had to deal with. Because they haven't played against those type of athletes yet. So it'll be interesting to see, how Texas reacts and how they defend a more physical wide receiving core too, because this group is physical, not only more physically gifted and more athletic, but I think they're a physical wide receiving group. Your best wide receivers for Georgia, first of all, you got Dylan. You got what? First of all, it's Arian Smith. He's got 23. He's our leading receiver. He's got 23 receptions, 412 yards, averaging 17.9 yards a catch. He's got 3 touchdowns. So he's the guy you got to look out for. He's got the verticality, right? Averaging almost 18 yards a catch. Anthony Evans III, he's dangerous. He's got ending around for 52 yards. And he's a guy that they've been trying to work into it. It's kind of a gadget guy. Got to watch out for him. Also Dominique Levet. He's got some speed, 27 receptions, 302 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And if you look at it, I think it's Dylan Bell is another guy that's been becoming a presence for him in the passing game. He's got 23 receptions, 298 yards, 13 yards per reception, and 4 touchdowns. Those are the names you got to look out for. Like I said, I don't think they have any what I would describe as elite personnel at wide receivers, but you're talking about all guys who you can be game breakers. They can all break the game wide open because they have explosive talent at the wide receiver position. So, all right, in a nutshell, that's what I'm worried about for the Texas defense going up against that offense. But I don't think they can run the ball consistently against Texas. I think you're going to get more of a one-dimensional team, and if Texas has to allocate resources to stop their passing game, then it may open up some things in the running game for them. Trevor Etienne is a good player. He's averaging over 5 yards per carry. So is Nate Frazier, but they have not faced a defense as stout as this Texas defense. And I think Texas will have more success stopping the run just because of the injuries on their O-line, as I mentioned earlier. They don't run the ball consistently. Their yards before contact the last 2 weeks. In the interior, you're getting less than a yard before contact. They're 83rd in yards per attempt, running in between the tackles this season. Last year and the year before, you're talking about them being top 15 in those numbers. So they can't control the line of scrimmage like they once did. I don't think they'll be able to control the line of scrimmage against Texas. One thing, that will concern me is, can Texas hold up in the back end, and maybe they won't have to if Texas can create enough pressure and get to Carson Beck before he's able to try to maximize some of those opportunities. All right, we come back. We'll get into off the record on the other side. That's when we get into some crazy, wacky stories from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world. All that and more when we return right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to a little off the record conversation here. I got a couple of pieces of audio, so we got time to play them both. But Cole McCoy he's now a broadcaster now, so he does a lot of stuff with the media. And Cole McCoy was telling a story about his time with Arizona with Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury that I thought was funny and worth sharing. So he was telling a story about, and I'll let him break it down for you, but basically about a play that they had dialed up, the perfect play for the perfect time, for the perfect opportunity, just not with the perfect player. But here is Cole McCoy telling the story.
Cliff comes in and he pulls this play up. We're going to get one-on-one on a backer or a safety, and we're going to put this ball up high, and our receiver's going to go up and get it. And there's this long pause, and Kyler looks at me and he says, Colt, can this dude catch that ball over his head like that? I'm like, yeah, he can catch it. And Kyler looks at me, folds his arms. Ain't no way. I'm like, dude, for this play and this design, third down in the red zone, this is the area that you want to attack versus this coverage. We got to do it. Just trust it and rip it. After the meeting, Kyler comes up to me. He's like, you know that dude ain't going to catch that ball above his head. He can't do that. I was like, yeah, you can. Like, just trust this. Beginning of the game next week, it's like 3rd and 8 in the red zone. We get the exact same coverage. Cliff calls the play in. Kyler throws a perfect ball. Receiver goes up, literally goes right through his hand. Exactly how Kyler said. He walks off the sideline. He looks right at Cliff. He said, I told you that guy can't catch this ball above his head. And he looks at me. He's like, I told you too. Y'all are crazy. Cliff and I talked afterwards, and I'm like, dude, it was a perfect play. Kyler threw a great ball. But he told you in the meeting on Tuesday this wasn't going to work, and it came to fruition.
Told you it wasn't gonna work. I told y'all, man. You can scheme or whatever you want to. I'm telling you, that dude is not gonna make that play. Sometimes you gotta listen to your quarterback. It's like, I told you, this guy's not gonna make the play, man. I'm out there with him every damn day. I practice with him. He can make some plays. He ain't gonna make that play. And damn if he ain't right. Sometimes you gotta listen to QB, man. You gotta listen to him. They know better. They out there with him all the time. I like that story from Cody.
I like that.
I tried to tell him.
Now, I'm glad Colt didn't throw anybody under the bus.
He did. He was very specific to say that guy, this guy. He now was Colt's a classy dude. He's like he want to throw him under the bus. But I'm sure we can probably, if we really want.
I mean, but which one of us is going to go through hours of Cardinals film to find the right play?
Nope. To find that, what was it, 3rd and 8 or something?
I don't even think he said what team it was against.
Yeah, he did. No, I'm not doing that. But yeah, he's a classy guy for that one. Jerry can be a classy guy. I don't know if he always is, but he certainly was not classy the way he handled the last radio interview that he did with the 105.3 the fan guys, because ended up being a viral moment for him, and not in a good way. But here's Jerry Jones. Apparently he spoke with Diana Rossini. He spoke with her, and there's audio of this conversation, and he spoke with her about that interview where he went off a little bit on the 105 through the fan guys. But here's Jerry Jones. I'm assuming that he is trying to explain why he went off on these guys, but like I said, I don't know if he does a good job. Here's Jerry Jones.
Yeah, I don't know that I would go as far as the volume connotation as yelling. Okay, but the facts are that if I'm going to be grilled by the tribunal, I don't need it to be by the guys I'm paying. The wrong ones were doing the questioning. Now, if those had been real fans sitting there, okay, or if there'd been people that knew what they were talking about, football people, might have had a different answer.
So he still keeps saying that basically people I pay. I mean, I know he, of course, I'm sure he is I'm sure he's a partner there, of course, in the station, because they have the Cowboy station, but he keeps saying like how he directly pays them. He keeps bringing that up. Like he is literally he is literally like paying the salaries of these players, when that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, this isn't the Cowboys radio network where it is like you're paying the announcer. And so in a post-game interview, if he comes up to you and he goes, Jerry, great to have you on the show. Jerry, why on earth would you do this? Then I get you'd be like, dude, I'm paying you. Why are you like this is supposed to be all hype? We're doing all hype on the Cowboys stuff. But yeah, the fan, that is their job, is to question. Like that is the job.
That's the job. Come on. I mean, and you had to expect that a little bit too, going into that game after the embarrassing loss to the Lions.
And it's one thing. It's one thing if you come out of it and Zeke had 90 yards, and they come out and go, Zeke hasn't had a 100-yard rushing game, and you have to go, man, why am I talking to these guys? Like they're just going to harass me no matter what. But if there's blatantly issues with your team right now,
oh man,
and then they go, hey, do you think you could have fixed some of these issues before? You're not supposed to flip out and go, no, there's nothing I could have done. You guys don't know what you're talking about. I did a lot of good things, and somehow it's just not working.
Yeah, nobody can do. Remember he said that earlier this offseason, nobody could do a better job at GM than me. Remember
Yes.
You remember these comments?
Yes. No, he said
nobody can come in and do a better job.
He said a lot of things. Jerry said a lot of things.
He said a lot of things. Yeah, no, after getting the ball, Dallas had the ball 11 times on Sunday and didn't score a single touchdown.
No.
How about this stat about the Cowboys? Of the 184 league-wide offensive performances this season, the Cowboys' Week 6 showing ranked 183rd in EPA per drive. That's how bad it was.
Yeah. I think one of the numbers Jerry really doesn't like is that in the last 20 games, the Cowboys are 16-4 at home. Those 4 are the last 4.
Wow.
They had a 16-game home win streak before the Green Bay loss. And they've lost 3 this season.
That. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Wow. And they've been butt whippings too at home.
Yeah.
Like not just like you've been. I mean, I know the Ravens when they came back and made it close, but like at halftime, those games were considered to be over.
Yeah.
You just got mollywopped. Man.
Yeah. You're getting blown out all those games, including the Green Bay game last season.
In the playoffs when it matters most.
Yeah. But that's your last 4 home games at AT&T Stadium are all just drubbings. And you would won 16 straight at home before that.
And he doesn't think they're regressing. That's why the hard hitting questions, Jerry, because everybody the regression is obvious from everybody who's observing the Cowboys that you're regressing. What's your solution to that?
Yes.
But he just wanted to go off and then literally the next day you had teams making moves to shore up their chances to make the playoffs, win a division, compete for a championship. You know, Bills making moves, or the Vikings make a move, so the Jets make a move, and yet all Jerry's doing is talking, just talking.
Just talking.
He's making headlines, but all he's doing is talking. There's no action. Where's the action? And we still haven't gotten the damn thing. He's got this bye week. Remember, we said it's big. If they don't do something, and it ain't even got to be a blockbuster splash move, but just something of substance at the running back position and a run-stopping defensive lineman of some sort. And if they don't do anything, I'm sorry, Cowboys fans. I think at that point, to me, I would, as a Cowboys fan, be disappointed. I'm not one, but I would also have to judge Jerry Jones. It would be an indictment on him and the entire organization, in my opinion, because they would be satisfied with their current situation and the current roster.
Yeah.
And there's no way you should be satisfied with that.
No, you should
There's
not
no
be.
way.
You should not be you should not be a team that is constantly around the rim of achieving things in the playoffs and then spin yourself right out of it. You're not even close anymore. You went from a playoff team that is close to being a playoff contender to now not being close to a playoff team. You're like close to, you may not even make the playoffs.
No, right now you're a team that might be on the bubble of making the playoffs. By the time we get to midseason, especially, because that stretch they have, they have the 49ers, they have the Texans and the Eagles, I think, in like the next at least 3 of the next 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to make the playoffs if you're third in your division.
Oh, I agree. Man, the Washington Commanders. That was the team nobody accounted for. We didn't think the Washington Commanders would make that kind of move. And right now, they look good. Even against, the Ravens. I know they lost that game, but they still look like they're still going to be a team. They're not – you start to see other teams around like the Saints. We saw them they started hot, then they fell off a little bit. The Washington Commanders, it seems like there's a little bit more staying power to what the Washington Commanders have built. And it's not just a flash in the pan. All right, we come back. We'll get into NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll talk Texans. We'll talk a little bit about the game, Sunday night game, which I thought may have been, a game that's kind of a dud. Didn't have any storylines, didn't have any appeal. Well, I was wrong about that. After the Jets acquired Devontae Adams, and then after the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to make a quarterback move, now there's a lot of discussion about that Sunday night game. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we'll talk Texans as well. And of course, more Texas versus Georgia. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain and talk about the MVP in the NFL, the Heisman Trophy race in college football. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Low One Rod Babers. Coming back on the Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host, the Idillionaire Patrick Davis, that's when he gets, inspired by something happening, an anniversary, something happening that's pop culturally relevant. But today, the inspiration comes from the top 5 matchup that will be played here in Austin this weekend between Texas and the Georgia Bulldogs. And so, inspired by that top 5 matchup, he is playing songs from Georgia artists who were born in the state of Georgia, who are singing and performing and rapping about Georgia and things in the state of Georgia and cities in the state of Georgia. That's basically the gist of the theme,
Yes,
right?
yes, and that's how you get Outkast and ATLians.
Love it. See, boom, beautiful. Like I said, it wasn't just enough to get songs about Georgia. No,
and not just get artists from Georgia,
not just artists from Georgia.
Both.
Do both of them, man. I gotta tell you, you never cease to amaze me, brother. That's fantastic. I thought you made it harder yourself. You said it made it easier.
Well, because otherwise I got to pick from like 150 artists from Georgia, and there's probably 50 that I really like, and
that's true.
So you're like, it's just so many great artists. Or then you could do the other one songs about Georgia, but then there's enough of that.
Why not do both? Why not do both?
Why not combine them?
It's a beautiful thing. Appreciate your efforts there. Appreciate the creativity. Also appreciate Patrick coming up with the topic for the big fat poll today, and that is posted at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll today. How many points will Texas score against Georgia? We gave you 4 choices: 0 to 14, 15 to 24, 25 to 34, and 35 plus. That sweet spot. 68% of you say 25 to 34. That is where Rod is as well. 17% drinking the burnt orange Kool-Aid. 35 plus. 15 to 24 gets 11% of the vote, and 3% of the vote. 0 to 14 buying in to that Georgia defense being a stout defense.
It's the top 20 defense. I mean, it's a Kirby Smart defense.
It is.
So, like I said, the only thing that's different is they don't have a calling card. They don't have a true unique identity. They're 111th, I think, in takeaways. They are, I believe, like 55th in tackles for loss. They're like 65th in sacks. Those are not, those are not embarrassing numbers or shameful numbers by any stretch. But this is Georgia we're talking about here. They're 64th in pass efficiency defense. So it's just that they don't have like that elite quality used to saying, man, oh, Georgia, this defense does this as well as anybody, if not better than everybody else in the country. They don't really have that. They're just a good defense. Top 20.
And I know Mississippi State presents different challenges than Texas, but Mississippi State did put 31 up on them last weekend.
They put 31 on them. Yeah. And if you watch the game, they were in control of the game, the entire game. But Mississippi State just were able to score. Remember, Texas, and I know it's a rival, so it was more personal. But Texas put their starters back in there. So they didn't allow a touchdown to Oklahoma because it meant something to them. They did not want to give up that touchdown to OU. So Texas is taking some pride in giving up just 3 touchdowns in 6 games. Yeah, but, I'm with you. I think for Texas versus Georgia, I got them scoring 31 points. That's where I am. I've been around 30 and 31 the whole week long, so I figure that's where the sweet spot for me. And Georgia, I got Georgia scoring. I did this question earlier this week too. I got Georgia scoring at least 2 touchdowns, maybe 3 when it's all said and done. 3 touchdowns, and then I haven't counted for the field goal, so I probably got them anywhere from 24 to 27 points.
Yeah, and I mean, but we'll see too if this becomes. Because it depends too. If they allow points to Texas, there's less field goals Georgia takes. They go for it on 4th down more. They push the ball further. They push it a little bit more because, if you're chasing Texas, you're going to push it a little bit more.
You're going to throw it, yeah.
But if your defense is holding, you kick field goals. So that's true. It goes kind of both ways of your score prediction of 31. They're probably okay. They're going to be in the game. So they may not, they may kick field goals early and then when the second half, stop kicking them as much. But you talk about that 4-down territory growing more and more because we've seen it every week with Texas so far is as they build that lead, that 4-down territory just grows and grows. And some of these teams are starting off against Texas in 4-down territory, just saying, screw it. Mm-hmm. We will not beat them with field goals.
Yep. It's that Joey McGuire recipe, right, from Texas Tech.
Yeah.
few years ago when they beat Texas and they went for it. I think it was historic. It was like an unprecedented amount of times, like in modern college football history. But it worked for them. They kept the football, and you basically want to play keep away. You want to limit possessions for Texas. That's what you want to do. We saw it from Mississippi State too, and throwing it out there to add to what Patrick's talking about. Georgia right now, they're one of the best fourth down teams in the country. They got 90% conversion rate on fourth downs. They're 10 of 11.
I mean, because they do. They have a stout offensive line and some good running backs. They're not great running backs, but they're good enough that you have to account for that. And if you do that and stuff the box, you got Carson Beck behind there.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's just that's a good point. So that's why you making some plays in the backfield, being able to knife through some gaps, shooting some gaps, and force some tackles for loss and negative plays. It is important for Texas because you don't want them to get to 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 because they're really good at converting those, and that's how they can keep the ball, milk the clock, and play keep away. And you don't want that. So that's why you get him into pass situations. Now we'll talk about how that could blow up in your face too, because Carson Beck is a really good quarterback. But I think ultimately, I mean, you don't want them to you can't afford for them to be balanced on offense. You at least need to make them one-dimensional. And taking away the run is the easiest thing to do. That's the easier thing to do because they don't have a good running attack anyway. They're 90-something in the country in rushing yards per game. I think they're like 65th in yards per carry. They are not necessarily a stout, formidable rushing team. But, I mean, they still have athletes. And they're missing they might be missing. For the last 2 weeks, they have been 2 of their starting offensive linemen. One is probable for this game, and one is questionable for this game. Tate Ratledge, I believe, is questionable. And the other, the starting center for them, Jarrett, he is, I think, probable at this point. So that's a big part of it, too. If they don't have those guys, I want to go look at those fourth down numbers in the last 2 weeks maybe and see if they've been able to convert a few of those in the last 2 weeks without 2 of their starting offensive linemen.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like Texas in the game and I feel more confident now. And maybe that's why the line has shifted. The line went from 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 to 5 to 5.5, and then now has settled back down to 5. Texas is a 5-point favorite over Georgia. So, I mean, was that public money, or if that's, the house deciding that maybe the injuries that we just talked about to Georgia, 2 of the starting offensive linemen, starting linebacker that's been out for them, a third-year starting linebacker, Smell Munden, he's going to be out for that game. Texas does have one impact player, that is questionable on the availability report, and that was Isaiah Bond. But Sark did mention yesterday, and maybe that's why the line is shifted, that Isaiah Bond, who is Texas' leading receiver, did practice and look good yesterday. And he is your, if you want to say that there's a catalyst for the passing game, it's him. And if you're trying to game plan to take anybody away in the Texas passing game, I guess it would be Bond and Helm, honestly. I think at this point, I'm trying to take away Bond and Helm. I think if I'm going against Texas, I think a lot of my game plan is, man, we're going to take Bond away on that deep stuff, that down the field stuff, and I'm taking Helm away. I don't want Quinn Ewers to have access to him because he's comfortable throwing the Helm. And Helm makes plays after the catch and yak yards. I would think those are the 2 guys I take away. And then I still got to deal with Golden, who I think is more than capable. There's still DeAndre Moore, who's more than capable. Then what am I just leaving Ryan Wingo out there? That's why if Bond's not out there, then honestly, I might decide I'm taking away Ryan Wingo. And I know that's not really, you ain't supposed to do that because he's a freshman. But man, the dude's averaging like 25 yards. Let me make sure, because I went and did the calculations because I thought it was crazy. I was like, man, this dude, he's the most explosive receiver Texas has had in years. He's averaging 25 yards per touch. He's averaging 40 yards per rush. He's averaging 22.7 yards per reception. I mean, he's only got 18 targets or something like that. But if Bond doesn't play, he's the guy. If Bond doesn't play, and if I'm a defense man, at times I may think about taking him out of the equation because he is just a big play waiting to happen. But that is part of the conundrum. You don't know who to take away in Texas offense. I would do it situationally. Early on in the game, I take away Bond. Third downs, I probably take away Helm. Red zone, I'm probably taking away Golden. I do it situationally, and you would still be just largely guessing. There's not enough trends that have, in my opinion, there are not enough patterns and trends that have been identified in terms of the passing tendency for Texas that you go, oh, they go to this guy in this situation all the time. That I haven't identified that. I would just be, throwing blank at the wall and seeing if it sticks and hoping that I'm guessing right at that time, or hoping that on that play he's the primary read and forcing Quinn to have to go somewhere else, and then maybe being able to get to him before he can do that. But there's no trend that I've identified that says in this situation this particular player is being schemed open in this situation every time. That's not the case. So, all right. That is the question. How many points will Texas score versus that Kirby Smart defense? We'll get into more Texas, Georgia, but I want to talk some NFL here. I want to talk about that Texans Green Bay matchup. We'll get into the Texans and the Packers matchup a little bit here. Also, I want to talk about the MVP race in the NFL and the Heisman race. I want to get to both of those before we are done for the day. So we'll do that. But first, let's get updated, educated, and informed on all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the MLB playoffs, the Dodgers got out to an 8-0 win over the Mets last night to take a 2-1 series lead in the NLCS. Walker Buehler pitched 4 innings, only allowing 3 hits and striking out 6. And the Dodgers bullpen was excellent the rest of the way en route to a shutout victory. Today, both series continue with the Guardians needing to get a win at home to get back in their series with the Yankees. And in the NFL, the Broncos will take on the Saints on Thursday Night Football with Sean Payton making his return to New Orleans for the first time since coming back to coaching. The Saints will be trying to get back in the winning column after losing the last 4 games without starting quarterback Derek Carr, who is listed as doubtful for the game. That is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. Appreciate those. All right, let's get to – I want to talk some NFL here while we got some time. One of the things that I was looking at, I'm really excited about because I was looking over the schedule for the upcoming weekend, and it's a bunch of really good games. You got Kansas City versus San Fran. We'll talk about that on the show tomorrow. Start previewing that. I was just telling you how much of a sexier storyline you have to follow, at least multiple storylines you have to follow in that Jets and that Steelers Sunday night football game that is in prime time. That's going to be good. But the Texans and the Green Bay Packers, it's another really good game that I think everybody's looking forward to with a showdown between 2 of your young quarterbacks who are ascending right now. And CJ Stroud's actually one of the leaders in the MVP race right now. If you look at those MVP odds, which we'll get to a little bit later on, I believe the last odds I looked at, and every different book's got their own odds. So this is just one specific group. It says here that Patrick Mahomes, he's at plus 320. This comes from rainbet.com. He's at plus 320. Lamar Jackson is at plus 55 now in MVP odds, the updated ones, and CJ Stroud's at plus 605. So they got him just ahead of Josh Allen at plus 610. So they got him right ahead of Josh Allen, which makes sense because he got a chance to face off against Josh Allen. And because his defense came to play, I would say CJ Stroud kind of won that head-to-head, and now he gets to go head-to-head with Jordan Love, who is one of the better young quarterbacks. I think the key to this game, because the Texans have proven they can rush the passer. They're top 5, I believe, in sacks right now in the NFL. They're one of the better pressure-oriented defenses out there, too. They can put a lot of pressure on the opposing quarterback. That's really going to be what this game comes down to. Jordan Love has been holding on to the ball a little bit longer than you probably would want for a young quarterback, but there's no reason to criticize him because even though he's holding on to the ball a little bit longer, like 2.5, sometimes between 2.5 and 2.8 seconds, long time, he's been making plays. His going into week 6, he was holding on to the ball an average of 2.86 seconds was his average time to throw going into week 6. That was the 10th highest in the league. Usually that means, first of all, it means you're looking downfield to make some plays. Number one, as a quarterback, usually it means that the defense has got a chance to get to you. The Cardinals and he was sacked 0 times. He was pressured 12 times, and he was 11 of 17, 174 yards, 3 touchdowns on dropbacks over 2.5 seconds. So he's not necessarily a quarterback that's in rhythm and on time. He's dropping back and he's trying to hit some vertical shots down the field. And the Packers, look at it, they average damn near 4 passing plays per game of 20 plus yards. That is tied for the most in the league. And that is connected to him holding on to the ball, sitting there in the pocket, standing strong in the pocket, and then they deliver some absolute darts down the field. So the Texans, they can rush the passer. I think it helps the Texans onto the ball, but they got to have the coverage downfield. They don't have the coverage downfield, and that could be a problem. But I did see this stat about the Texans, which gave me some confidence that they'd be able to hold up in coverage, because I know they can create the pressure. I believe they can do that. They've been doing that all season long with Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter. And I think D'Amico is starting to become a little bit more aggressive and blitzing. So they're able to create a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. The best completion percentage, though, right now on best completion percentage allowed on 10-plus yard throws, the Texans second behind the Chiefs, actually, on completion percentage allowed on 10-plus yard throws. Remember, Texans early on in the season had an issue giving up big chunk yardage plays, especially in that Indy game early on in the season. If they can avoid the big chunk yardage plays against Green Bay, I do think that's where you kind of start your game plan if you're the Texans, and then making sure you get to Jordan Love. I mean, he's going to hold on to the ball for 2.8 seconds. You should be able to get home. I mean, for the Texans, like that is right in the range where you should be able to disrupt and you should be able to put him under constant duress. That will be the challenge, but he has been really good, under pressure. So he's a really good quarterback in that regard too. But I mean, that's the recipe for the Texans. Put pressure on them. And I like the Texans offense the way it looked, even without Nico Collins. I know that's a big loss. I mean, he was the best wide receiver in the league, and you had the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the league at the time. So I don't want to act like it is not a huge loss for the Texans. But CJ Stroud and really the Texans offense, it transforms when he's out and Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce are healthy. They ran a lot more power gap schemes, trying to run. We're talking about that's more of a downhill running game on them. The Shanahan run scheme is famous for its zone blocking principles, and they still have a healthy dose of that, but they probably had more power gap schemes than I've seen from a Bobby Slowick offense in some time. So they were trying to run downhill on that Patriots team. Now, it could have been scheme and team specific, where they said, oh, no, the Patriots are vulnerable to gap power schemes, so we're just going to run downhill on them. Or it could be Bobby Slowick trying to now create his own cover version of the Shanahan offense, when before he was real strict in his interpretation of the Shanahan offense, almost too strict. And it's like, no, once you can master the core principles, then you need to, pivot and start running your own version of the Shanahan offense. And I think maybe we're witnessing that with Bobby Slowick right now, because that was impressive. Stroud had a season high 3 touchdowns, but he threw for a season low 192 yards. And before Joe Mixon, or at least after that Joe Mixon injury, and then dealing with the Pierce injury too, they became a save me CJ franchise where they would get in third and long way too often. They would get in these really compromising positions because they wouldn't have any production on first, on second down, early downs, third down. CJ go save the day, and CJ would, because he's just that good. But now with Joe Mixon and the no Nico Collins, because part of the save me CJ model and save me CJ recipe is CJ was looking at Nico Collins on every critical down. If you're in the red zone, if it's third down, I'm looking at Nico. And Nico was so damn good, team still couldn't stop it. And they know CJ was going to Nico. He was looking for Nico on those critical downs. But no Nico, then with Joe Mixon now and Pierce added, they've gotten rid of the save me CJ recipe, and now it's more balanced in the offense. So he doesn't have to throw for damn near 300 yards. You can get 192 out of him, season low for him, but get a season high in passing touchdowns from him because you can dial him up when you're in the red zone. Dial him up on third downs. It's not a we need you, CJ, to keep us on schedule, put us ahead of the change. They don't need that because they have other ways and other means to do it when Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce are healthy. And with that running game, now, will that translate on the road versus Green Bay? That is the question. But I do like the transformation we've seen from the offense without Nico and now with Joe Mixon and the balance. And it's going to go through another, hopefully, everybody gets healthy. It'll go through another transformation when Nico gets healthy and you got a healthy Joe Mixon. And then you'll have that's the offense we probably all envisioned and we all expected when all of these big time offseason acquisitions were made by the Texans on offense. That's probably what we expected. And we may get it just at the right time. Toward the middle to the end of the season, Nico gets healthy, and then you got healthy Joe Mixon. That is and then CJ Stroud playing like an MVP caliber quarterback, which he has been, by the way, so far this season. CJ's performed at a really high level. You get that CJ with Joe Mixon. Now you're talking about at least being able to threaten the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. But it starts with this game, though. You got to put pressure on Love. Under pressure, he's completing 40% of his passes. That's 29th in the league. 6.8% interception rate. That's 28th in the league. Put pressure on him, and he looks human. Actually, he looks not only human, he looks like one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league, but he ain't the only one. But his shift is pretty drastic from handling pressure to having a clean pocket. He's playing like a top 5, top 10 quarterback with pressure, bottom 5, bottom 10 quarterback. All right, we'll come back. We'll get into the MVP conversation a little bit. We just talked about CJ Stroud's latest odds for the MVP. You may be surprised because Lamar Jackson is potentially having a better season this year than he had last year. Is it possible with the MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year on the same offense? I don't know how often that's happened, but it is right now a possibility with the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk about that. Also, we'll get into some Heisman conversation too. I think the Heisman race is probably down to 3 guys. And right now it's tough for me to visualize anybody else competing with those 3 guys. So we'll talk about the top 3 choices for the Heisman right now, what the narrative is starting to build about the narrative and those 3 players. We'll discuss that on the other side too. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. I want to talk a little bit about the MVP a little bit. I want to talk about the Heisman race a little bit, the awards given to the best players at each level of football. And we'll hear from Travis Hunter because I think the Heisman race, he's one of the three players I think that has the best chance to win the Heisman. We'll get into that a little bit, but I want to talk about MVP too because I saw those MVP odds and I don't think people realize how well Lamar Jackson is playing right now. And he is the defending MVP, of course, but it's a real possibility. Now, like I said, we don't know how long he's going to continue. If he stays healthy, of course, it's got to be a big part of it. But there's a real possibility, guys, that Lamar Jackson, because right now he's right behind Patrick Mahomes, all right, for the best MVP odds. And first of all, let's deal with the Patrick Mahomes stuff here, too, because Patrick Mahomes has really no business being the front runner right now, the odds-on favorite to win MVP. If he continues to play like he's playing right now, there's no way they can justify giving it to him. But if he turns it around and, the Kansas City Chiefs, offense starts to look like the offense of 2-3 years ago, then maybe. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think right now what we're getting from Patrick Mahomes is what we're going to get for most of the year. He's just going to find a way in clutch time to win big games. But Patrick Mahomes right now, and like I said, the latest odds got him as the odds on MVP. Guys, he's on pace for career lows in touchdown passes and QBR. He's on pace for career highs in interceptions. He ranks 16th in QBR. He's tied for second with 6 interceptions, 11th in passing yards per game. And for some reason, people still got him, at least, a lot of books have him as the odds-on favorite for MVP. So he's not going to win it. That's my point. And I don't think he cares about winning. I think he cares about winning 3 in a row and being a legend. That's all he cares about. So he's not going to win it. And then you start looking at Lamar Jackson. I guess let's look at, Lamar Jackson realistically here. Lamar Jackson right now, guys, is 8th in rushing. The remarkable thing is Lamar Jackson has led, if I'm not mistaken, he's led the Ravens in rushing every year since 2019. I believe he's led them. That's a bit remarkable. If I'm not mistaken, Lamar Jackson has led the Ravens in rushing like 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 23. I want to say maybe we're going on 5 years. 23 was like 4 to 5 years in a row where he led them in passing and in rushing. Just crazy, unprecedented, freaky stuff. He's not this year, though. He's not this year. And that may be a good thing because Derrick Henry's leading the league in rushing right now. And that's looking like that may have been the acquisition of the year for any team. I mean, he's looking like he is now drinking from the fountain of youth all of a sudden. So he's leading the league in rushing right now. Derrick Henry is. And Lamar Jackson is 8th in rushing. So he's still top 10. He's 8th in rushing right now. And he is 3rd. If you go look at he's 3rd and 6th in passer rating and QBR. I don't know how often it's happened if the MVP and the offensive player of the year have been on the same team, but man, it might be a real possibility with the Ravens right now. And how about this? So Lamar Jackson's got 2 interceptions this season, right? That's it. Just got 2 picks on the season. One of those interceptions came in week 6 against the Commanders. This week 6 against Commanders, he threw a quick out to Mark Andrews, and Mark Andrews bobbled it, and it got bobbled off his hands and went to Mike Sarensteele, and it ended up being intercepted. The other pick came week 2 against the Raiders, and Rashad Bateman bobbled the football, and it all went off of his hands, and it was intercepted. If not for the 2 bobbled, but by the way, we're on target passes. If they weren't bobbled and caught, he'd have 0 interceptions on the season right now. That's how good Lamar Jackson's been playing.
It's ridiculous.
It's crazy, man. I'm telling you, he's right now through the first 6 weeks. He's got over 1,500 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, those 2 interceptions that aren't his fault, in my opinion. He's got a 108.4 passer rating. Only Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield are better. A passing EPA of 40.5. Only Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen are better. And it's adjusted yards per attempt leads the league right now. From the pocket alone, because everybody else he's not a pocket passing quarterback. He's thrown for over 1,300 yards, 581 air yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That was from the pocket. Passer rating of 102.8 and a passing EPA of plus 35.5. Only Brock Purdy's passing EPA is better in that regard. I'm telling you, man, he's just been playing the quarterback position better than he's ever played it, and he won MVP already twice. But he's never played the quarterback position this good under pressure. He's got 100.5 passer rating under pressure. That's the 5th best in the league. Passing EPA of plus 1.32, which is also one of the best in the league. Except if he keeps playing like this, guys, he's gonna be the front runner for the MVP again when we get down to it. I think he's gonna lose to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs if he ends up making it to the AFC title game again. But hell, that may be after they've already decided the MVP again. Is that possible to win a they're not going to give it to him just because of that, just because we won it last year, and that would be his 3rd. That's going to work against him now.
Yeah, of course. He's 27. He'll be 28 when the MVP is given out. He'll be 28 years old as a 3-time MVP who's never made it to a Super Bowl.
So they're not going to give it to him because of that, and they're not going to give it to Patrick Mahomes if his stats are that bad. They can't give it to him just because he's the best quarterback.
No, they don't want to give him another one either for not that year. You know what I mean? Because he's got
CJ Stroud. This is your year. CJ Stroud. This is your year, man.
You better win some of these games against good teams.
Yeah, but don't you agree? Like they seem like they would want to give it to CJ Stroud if it was close between all those.
But I think Josh Allen's in that discussion.
Josh Allen is in this, but he beat Josh Allen head to head. And Josh Allen had the worst performance in the last 30 years.
Who's going to remember that in 10 weeks?
I'm gonna keep tweeting it out. But you're right. Nobody's gonna care. You're right. No, you're right about that. I agree. It's not. Nobody's gonna care about that.
And now he's got Amari Cooper.
And now he's got Amari Cooper.
So
that's more.
If that blows it up, because again, they want to give it to people that they feel are not flashes in the pan. I know CJ Stroud, this is year 2 of it, but they'd rather give it to a Josh Allen who's been around that MVP discussion for several years. Then they go, okay, well, like in the NBA, it's constantly there's guys that'll, you'll be like, well, we're not giving it to LeBron again. So, all right, James Harden, you're always kind of around this discussion. You get it this year. And it'll be guys like that. You kind of have that. And this could be that kind of year where they're like, we don't want to give it to Mahomes or Jackson. And they're the 2 best players in the league. So
and Jay Daniels can't get it because he's a rookie.
He's a rookie. So
he's got.
And, he's also still got to go the rest of the season, because if he goes the rest of the season playing like this, it'll be insane. But yeah, I think CJ Stroud would be your 4th. Josh Allen right now, I think, is your 3rd. And I get he had the one bad game. It won't matter in 10 weeks. What CJ Stroud is doing early, what Jane Daniels doing early, none of it really matters. Like, your stats have to be good enough. You can't just be statistically terrible in your first few weeks, but it's going to be that end when you get down between, basically when we get to that run where there's the Thursday Thanksgiving games and there's the Thursday Christmas games or the Wednesday Christmas games or whatever they are. Once you get in that stretch, November, December, I think that's where you'll start to really see the MVPs, who separates, who becomes the guys at that point.
Yeah, because Texans got some big games late in the year too against Kansas City. So it was Miami, but that's not a big game anymore.
I mean, but Tua technically could be back by then if he comes back.
They could.
And then, forget the record. They'd still be a good team.
No, you're right. That's a good point. But you're right. This is one of those games for CJ Stroud. It's a kind of a showcase game.
Yeah.
If you want to, and like I said, I think he's got a good shot at winning his MVP because they don't want to give it to Mahomes. They don't want to give another one to Lamar. But you're right about Josh Allen. That's the other one. So it's between, and Brock Purdy is he's hovering around there too. I think he's at plus, because Josh Allen is right behind CJ Stroud at plus 610. They got Brock Purdy at plus 1180, and they got Jaden Daniels at plus 1250. So there is kind of a significant drop off after those top 4. After Josh Allen.
And I mean, I think Brock Purdy, it'll be a little bit more. People remember, man, that offense and team didn't look nearly as good without Christian McCaffrey, right?
I know, it's crazy because he's killing it right now.
He's doing really well, but the team itself doesn't. And so you go, well, is there an engine in it where he has so many weapons? He still has Ayuk, he still has Deebo Samuel, and then is there something to it? But I mean, he's playing really good football. But
really good
yeah, I don't. I think he's going to have to. Man, how many seasons would he have to have around there before they let a Mr. Irrelevant win an MVP?
I agree. You're right about that. Because remember it all last year, and it was still like a flash in the pan. I think we're just getting past. Okay, it's not a flash in the pan.
Yeah,
it's substantive. He's going to end up getting a second contract with the 49ers, and he'll be their franchise quarterback. So we're just getting to that stage. So maybe it's hard for some people to accept. Like, so he's an MVP candidate too, from being Mr. Irrelevant, and so maybe he's got a ways to go there. But like I said, this year though, I mean, you go look at it. He has his passer rating on passes 10+ yards. He's second behind Jaden Daniels right now. And then if you look at catchable, well, basically you go look at air yards per attempt, because everybody thinks like, oh, he's just dinking and dunking. He's not throwing the football downfield. Yeah. Well, he's averaged twice as many air yards per attempt than Patrick Mahomes this season.
Well, no, but that's the thing. We can't compare to Patrick Mahomes. I know he's the front runner in the odds, but he is not. This is his worst season. And then, of course, he came out after all the trades, and they asked him, do you want to get a wide receiver? He's like, I'm good.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but you know what? They just drafted one in the first round, and I know Rasheed Rice got hurt, but then they brought in, was it Juju?
Marquise, they brought Juju. They brought in Brown, who hasn't played yet because of his injury, but he'll be back at some point.
Yeah, and he said I trust Juju. I remember him saying that. He said I trust Juju at this point. So, you won it last year with the worst wide receiving core in the league. So I mean, he believes he can. He believes this is an upgrade. He's like, no, I'm living good. This is a good group of wide receivers here compared to what he had last year.
Kadarius Toney's not here anymore.
Oh, that's right. Kadarius Toney is gone. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. This it'll be interesting to see the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk about that tomorrow. The Chiefs versus the 49ers. I think that'll be an interesting game to kind of see where both of those teams are. A Super Bowl rematch from last year. But that's your MVP odds, the NFL MVP odds. And like I said, I think it's opening up for CJ Stroud just because of the reluctance that voters will have to give a third one to Lamar Jackson before he turns 28, and to give another one to Patrick Mahomes when he's having his worst season ever. It's gonna be hard to justify that. CJ Stroud, Josh Allen, all you got to do, and you got to win over Josh Allen. That's it. Now, if we talk about this balanced offense for the Texans, though, that does change things. You do need CJ Stroud to have the numbers.
You do, but he can get those. Again, you said he had touchdown passes this week.
He had touchdowns. He had 3 season high.
So, and look, there'll still be plenty of games where he's going to have to throw the ball and catch back. I mean, you were playing the Patriots. You were up for most of the game.
Yeah. Just get the wins.
Yeah. So when you're playing some better offenses, then you'll have to be putting the ball around some more.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. But there you go. So if you're a Texans fan, get excited. CJ Stroud, and the media likes him. Remember, he's a media darling, so they like CJ Stroud too. All right, there you go. That's our MVP conversation. We'll talk some more NFL tomorrow because we're going to dive into some of the interesting matchups coming up this weekend. But when we come back, we'll dive into Who Said That. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a new theme Thursday, and the theme is a simple one because all eyes will be on Austin, Texas, a top 5 matchup in college football. Texas taking on the Georgia Bulldogs. So inspired by Georgia coming to town. My man Patrick, my co-host, the Idealionaires, decided to feature artists from the state of Georgia who are singing, rapping, performing a song about things in Georgia, the state, cities in Georgia. So he doubled down on it. Artists from Georgia singing about Georgia. Beautiful thing. And so got a little Luda there for you. I like that. No
Actually,
doubt
this
about
is
it.
Jermaine Dupri is who the song is actually by, featuring
but
Luda.
Luda's, yes.
Jermaine
okay,
Dupri
yeah,
from Atlanta,
yeah,
singing "Welcome to Atlanta." So
yeah.
you know,
And Luda's from Atlanta too. So
I think
counts.
Luda grew up somewhere in Atlanta. He's actually born in Illinois, traveled around a lot as a kid. He did go to high school in Atlanta.
Yeah, he claims Atlanta.
He does claim Atlanta. Went back to Atlanta after he's graduated and everything else. But yes.
But you don't count that because he wasn't born.
Well,
so
we can count all
artists who were born in Atlanta.
I mean,
born in Georgia.
I'm born in Georgia.
Okay.
I went with that. But Jermaine Dupri is actually who does the song, and Jermaine Dupri was born in Georgia. So
there you go. See, he's strict about it too, folks. All right, we also have the topic for the big fat poll of the day. That is also posted for you on X. You can go check that out at the Horn ATX. Simple question: how many points will Texas score against that very vaunted Georgia defense? And 68% of you who voted in this poll said that Texas will score between 25 and 34 points against the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, so we appreciate you guys voting on that. Go check it out at the Horn ATX. Now it's time for Who Said That? That's when we play pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify who said that.
He's staying with me for the short term, so went right into some of the signals, and he was about 95%. And he knows kind of the original to the second iteration to the third and on down. So his knowledge of the game is pretty extensive. Obviously, looks like he's drinking the elixir from the fountain of youth. As I watched some of his clips, we went back and watched some old 2014 stuff when he was a rookie, and I lovingly call him Fat Tay because he was, over 220. Then he got real serious about his diet and his health and got down to under 210, and speed came back and became the dynamic player that he is today. So it's been a strange 24 hours, but really fun to see my friend.
There you go. Aaron Rodgers talking about his BFF Devontae, staying with him. So they staying together, hanging out.
Yeah, I saw when he was on Pat McAfee, they were talking, then all of a sudden Devontae just walked out behind him.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny. That was actually pretty good. Yeah, man. So hey, it's if it works, it's gonna be a really cool story. And you know what? If it doesn't work, it's gonna be a really entertaining, compelling car crash.
Yeah, it will.
And we're all gonna be rubbing neck in the sea. So
we saw Jamal Adams just asked for his release from the Titans. The Titans said they're going to do it. Jamal Adams go back there too, and now they have to both. Man. And we have two Adams going back to the Jets.
Didn't Marquez Valdez-Scantling also get released? They want to bring him back and just try to recreate what you had with the Packers.
Oh,
with
that's what
the
Jets.
Is
Mercedes Lewis still on the Jags? Is he? It's like 50. Put him back on there.
Put him back on there. Oh, man. Yeah, I can't wait to watch how it all goes down. Like I said, that Sunday night game now, interesting for a lot of different reasons versus the Steelers Sunday night. All right. Thanks, Patrick, for all you do. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be talking plenty of Texas, Georgia. Matter of fact, most of the show will just be Texas, Georgia breakdown. We'll slap it up, flip it, and rub it down from every angle. We'll also talk about some of the big matchups in college football coming up. Then we can also talk about some of the big matchups coming up in the NFL. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We'll be talking about it right here on the Rodcast. We love you guys. We mean that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. Until next time, hook 'em and peace.